Am I the asshole for telling my mom she can't share a room or a bed with her boyfriend in my home? When I, 27 female, was in college I met my boyfriend and we moved in together, sharing a place with some friends, after dating for a year. I was 19 when we met and 20 when we moved in together. We decided from that point onward to take turns spending Christmas with our families. But the first year we were supposed to see mine, my mom made it clear my boyfriend could not stay and we weren't sharing a room or a bed in her house. My dad argued in favor of letting it happen since I was an adult and living with him already, but mom said no. She hated that I wouldn't stay at their house then and instead booked an Airbnb. She said I should respect the rules of her house and I told her I was, but I didn't want to tell my boyfriend to be alone on the holidays and especially when his family had welcomed us together happily. After that I made it clear there would be no coming to visit like that if I couldn't sleep with my boyfriend. My mom said it wasn't like we were married, so she had every right to that rule. 2 years ago my dad died and for 11 months my mom has been in a relationship with her boyfriend. They don't live together exactly, but according to my brother he was there most nights while he was still there. My mom and brother aren't really talking right now. My brother could hear mom and her boyfriend in bed and he hated it, so he moved out. He's also 22 and had wanted to, but it gave him the push to move. My mom was furious and demanded to know why he was leaving out of nowhere, and she freaked when my brother told her he was tired of hearing them. It started mom off on him not being happy for her that she found someone again after dad died. My mom seems to be missing my brother being around and she told me she misses having her kids around her, so she wanted to visit for a week or two soon. She wanted to bring her boyfriend along and I told her she can't share a room or a bed with him in my home. I told her I do not want to hear that. She got mad at me and said she's a grown woman and should be allowed her freedom. I told her she was all right denying it to me and I wasn't even planning to have sex in her house. But it sounded like she doesn't care if we hear or not and I'm not dealing with it. I also told her I wasn't going to reward her with sharing with her boyfriend when she has been so strict with me about it. My mom accused me of acting like a petty child. Now to the next story, story 2. I was blamed for infertility by my ex-husband and in-laws, despite normal results, so I left. Now my ex has lost everything due to his lies. I, 32F, was married to my ex-husband Jake, 34M, for 5 years. Initially, we had a good relationship. When we first met, Jake was charming, amusing, and easy to chat to. I genuinely believed I had met someone who would always have my back. But everything changed once we married. Jake's parents, particularly his mother, began pressuring us to have children almost immediately following the wedding. At first, the comments were lighthearted, such as, "When will we have a grandchild?" However, it quickly became the only topic they wanted to discuss. For reference, Jake is an only child whose parents were extremely controlling. His mother was the type of person who had a plan for everything: how Jake should live, who he should marry, and what his life should be like. While we were dating, I had no idea how much power his family wielded. However, following the wedding, it became evident that Jake had a strong desire to gain their approval for all he did. He was especially eager for his mother's approval, which produced a lot of stress between us. Around 2 years into our marriage, Jake's parents' push to have children became overwhelming. We had tried, but nothing was happening, so I went to the doctor to make sure everything was fine on my end. All of my tests came back normal, which was a relief for me. Naturally, I suggested Jake get tested as well, just to rule out any problems on his end. That's when things started to unravel. Jake refused to be tested. He acted as if I had insulted him by even mentioning it. He asserted that he wasn't the problem and refused to talk about it anymore. I was frustrated by his reaction since all I wanted to do was figure out what was going on so we could move forward. However, Jake was locked in a haughty mindset, as if admitting a potential problem on his side was impossible or shameful. As Jake continued to decline testing, I began to feel bad about myself. Even though the physicians had told me that nothing was wrong with me, his actions made me feel as if I was somehow to blame. Meanwhile, Jake's parents persisted with their intrusive questions and comments. Every time we visited them, the subject of their prospective grandchildren dominated the conversation. It got to the point where I dreaded going to family gatherings because I knew they'd just talk about having grandchildren. No matter how many times I attempted to explain that these things take time or that we were working on them, his mother gave me a condescending look, as if she was disappointed in me. Then they began making direct statements to me about how they hoped I was not the problem. At one family gathering, where a slew of Jake's distant relatives were present, Jake's mother bluntly informed me that she hoped I wasn't damaged, in a very loud voice, with a phony, worried expression on her face. I felt humiliated. Jake said nothing. He just sat there awkwardly, laughing it off as if it was no big thing. That stung more than anything. I believed he should have defended me, but instead he allowed his parents to humiliate me. When I tried to talk to him about it, he dismissed it, saying it was simply his mother's sense of humor. A few months later, we had another family meal, and Jake's mother chose to make another harsh remark. This time, she did not hold back. She went into hysterics, wailing about how old she was getting and how I was wrecking her dreams of having grandchildren. She then started screaming in my face, calling me a broken woman, and a disgrace to womanhood. Everyone stayed silent. I was horrified. I did everything I could to keep myself from saying something rude. I knew she enjoyed humiliating me in front of her family, but this was beyond uncalled for. I looked around to see if anyone had anything to say, but everyone just kept looking down at their plates. The only answer was Jake's father nodding in agreement with his wife. Jake, like the rest of his family, simply gazed at his plate, pretending nothing was going on. That was it. That was my breaking point. I couldn't believe that, despite everything I'd gone through while trying to figure out why we couldn't conceive, Jake refused to defend me. Seeing him sit there passively, without even looking at me, let me realize where our marriage stood. That night, when we arrived home, I packed my bags and informed Jake that I was going. He hardly reacts. He didn't seem to care that I was done. He was so accustomed to his parents being the focus that he had no idea he had lost me. That only made me angry. How difficult is it to stand up for someone you claim to love? I left that day and have never looked back. Leaving was not an easy decision, but it was the best one I've ever made. After I left, I moved in with a buddy for a few months while I planned my future moves. I filed for divorce, and the process went fairly smoothly. Jake did not fight it, and we ended things peacefully. After the divorce was finalized, I focused on reconstructing my life. I returned to my profession, surrounded myself with helpful friends, and finally met someone new, my now husband, Sam, 35 million. Sam has been an absolute breath of fresh air. In many ways, he is diametrically opposed to Jake. He listens, communicates, and, most importantly, always looks out for me. We ended up dating for only a year because I became pregnant and we rushed to marry. Let me tell you, I've had a much better time with Sam in this short period than I did with Jake. Sam and I were ecstatic about my pregnancy. It meant so much more to me after everything I'd been through with Jake and his family. Now, let's look at what transpired recently. One day, while out shopping with Sam, I ran across Jake's parents in the mall. To recap, it's been 2 years since I last saw them. I was visibly pregnant at the time, and their reaction was priceless. They were stunned to say the least. They tried to be courteous by making small chat, but I could see they were shocked to see me pregnant. I'll admit that seeing their reactions made me feel vindicated. They spent years torturing and discouraging me for being unable to conceive, yet look where I am now. I hastily said goodbye and nearly forgot I had met them. Sam and I were very busy preparing for the baby, and I had no desire to linger on the past. But then, approximately a week after the mall incident, Jake began texting and calling me. Initially, I ignored them. I assumed his parents had informed him of my pregnancy and new marriage, and Jake was just being nosy. But he did not stop. I eventually opened one of his texts. He was infuriated. When his parents discovered I was pregnant, they challenged him about our marriage and why we had never had children. Jake apparently never corrected his parents when they assumed I was the reason we couldn't have children. In fact, he encouraged people to believe I was the problem. When they saw I was pregnant, they understood he had been lying to them all along. According to what I've heard, his parents were outraged when they discovered the truth. They accused him of squandering years of their lives by convincing them that they would never have grandkids because of me, when in truth, Jake was most likely the one with fertility troubles. To make matters worse for Jake, his parents had always intended to leave him a sizable inheritance. However, after finding his lies, they cut him off totally. Of course, Jake blamed me for everything. He said that if I had not flaunted my pregnancy in front of his parents, none of this would have occurred. He accused me of ruining his life because he had lost everything, even the inheritance he had hoped for. I couldn't believe he was blaming this on me. I simply moved on with my life, and it was not my fault that his lies came back to haunt him. I have not answered Jake's mails, and I do not intend to. I'm content with where I am today, and I have no desire to become engaged in his family turmoil. In my opinion, Jake dug his own hole. He would not be in this situation if he had not allowed his parents to treat me like garbage or lied to them about why we couldn't have children. I really wish Jake would stop making me feel terrible about something that is entirely his fault. Despite my intense feelings about this, I spoke with a friend yesterday and told her all that had transpired. She told me I was wrong to leave Jake like that and that I should have pushed him harder to complete the examinations. She also claimed I should not have spoken with Jake's parents and that it was petty of me to do so. I mean, I can see how I was being petty. I never wanted to hurt Jake. I must say, however, that Jake being punished for his falsehoods is a pleasant bonus. Anyway, my husband told me that anything my buddy claimed was false, but I can't help but wonder if there was some truth to what she said. So, am I an asshole, AITA, for leaving my ex-husband after his family labeled me broken? And am I wrong not to feel sorry about him losing his inheritance? Update 1. Escalation and desperation. Okay, so things have grown much more complicated, and I really need to vent. After I posted my original story, I assumed that was the end of it. But oh boy, was I mistaken. Jake has been blowing up my phone non-stop. I blocked his number, but he then began texting me on social media. I also blocked him there, but he kept creating new accounts just to reach out. He even began phoning from several numbers. I did not respond to any of it, but the texts grew increasingly frantic and angry over time. At first, he was simply blaming me for damaging his connection with his parents. But now he's gone over the deep end, claiming I owe him since I took away his future. He insists that if I had stayed with him, none of this would have occurred. It's really exhausting. Some individuals in the comments on my initial post agreed with my buddy and questioned why I didn't push harder to persuade Jake to take fertility tests. So let me be clear. I tried. I truly tried. But every time I offered it, Jake would shut me down entirely. He acted as if I had betrayed him simply by bringing it up. He refused to speak to me for days after I inquired about the tests. I tried everything I could to be patient, but there's only so much you can do when someone is so stubborn. I eventually realized I couldn't force him to do something he didn't want to do, so I had to let it go for my own sanity. Some individuals have also accused me of being selfish for displaying my pregnancy in front of Jake's parents. Look, I hadn't planned to run into them. I was just out shopping with my spouse, minding my own business. I wasn't seeking for them specifically to rub my pregnancy in their faces. However, I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel great to see their astonished reactions. I experienced what I can only describe as a nightmare, with them continually belittling me, making me feel broken, and blaming me for everything. So, yeah, it felt nice to demonstrate that I wasn't the problem or broken, but I wasn't trying to upset Jake or make any drama. All I wanted was to enjoy my life. I viewed our interaction as a fun boost to my self-esteem. Jake has pushed things to a whole new level. He didn't simply message me. He found out where I live. I have no idea how he found my address, and I am afraid. He arrived at my residence 2 nights ago. He hammered on the door for at least 15 minutes, wanting to speak with me. Fortunately, my husband Sam was home and promptly instructed him to leave. Jake refused, claiming that he only wanted to explain himself, but Sam quickly shut that down. He warned Jake that if he didn't leave, we would contact the cops. Jake eventually backed down, but not before shrieking that I had wrecked everything for him. It was quite terrifying. I can't help but fear that if I let things continue unchecked, he'll do something even more insane. Many people asked me how I discovered Jake had lost his fortune. Fortunately, I didn't learn all of the specifics straight from him. From what I've gathered from his angry messages, it appears that his parents feel completely betrayed. They were enraged when they found that the reason they never had grandchildren wasn't because of me, but rather Jake himself. They believe he lied to them for years, convincing them that I was the problem. Because their whole attention was on having grandkids, they thought Jake no longer deserved the inheritance they had intended to leave him. According to my understanding, they have now completely cut him off, both emotionally and financially. Jake is heartbroken by this, which I suppose is why he's pursuing me so aggressively. I do not feel bad about him losing the inheritance. I mean, what was I meant to do? Stay in a terrible marriage so his parents don't find out the truth? That is not on me. Jake made his own decisions. He could have told his parents the truth at any time, but instead he allowed them to mistreat me and never defended me. So, no, I don't feel sorry for what happened to him. If anything, it seems like karma is finally coming up with him. However, I have to admit that I am a little nervous. Jake's behavior is becoming increasingly unpredictable. My spouse and I are already discussing taking extra precautions in case Jake turns up again. We've considered placing cameras around the house and even obtaining a restraining order if he doesn't back down. I want to believe that he will ultimately give up, but something tells me that he will not let this go easy. He seems to be spiraling out of control, and I have no idea what he's going to do next. So, that's where things are right now. I believe this chapter in my life was over, but Jake had other intentions. I simply hope he quickly sees that I am not to blame for his difficulties. All I did was move on with my life, and to be honest, I am happier than I have ever been. I simply want to be left alone so I can enjoy the life I've created with my husband and our upcoming baby. I'll keep you posted if anything more happens, but for now, I'm hoping Jake gets the word and leaves me alone. If not, I suppose we'll have to escalate the situation and engage authorities. Hopefully, that does not happen, but who knows at this point. Thank you to everyone who responded to my first post and offered suggestions. It made me realize that I wasn't crazy for leaving Jake or feeling the way I do now. I'll report again if anything changes, but for now, I'm just trying to keep focused on the future and avoid letting Jake's bullshit drag me back into the past. Update 2. Hello, everyone. I didn't expect to be back with another update so soon, but things have taken a wild turn. After my last update, I assumed Jake would finally leave me alone. I mean, even showing up at my place was already a step too far, right? To Jake, that was insignificant. Instead, he's devised a new strategy, which is just as crazy as it sounds. After Sam, my husband, and I made it obvious that we did not want Jake anywhere near us, he began bombarding me with messages again. Instead of being upset and blaming me for everything, Jake's demeanor improved dramatically. Suddenly, he begged me for assistance. He began emailing me things like, "I need you to talk to my parents, and you owe me this." He transitioned from being like a complete lunatic to requesting favors. At this point, I was perplexed but also intrigued by what he planned to accomplish. Jake is now certain that if I speak with his parents and explain everything, they will give him his fortune back. He wants me to go to them, tell them it was a misunderstanding, and somehow persuade them that he is still deserving of the riches they were planning to leave him. At first, I assumed it was a joke. There's no way he believes I'd do that, right? But he's completely serious. He acts as if I can simply wave a magic wand and make everything better for him. He even said that if I hadn't bumped into them, they would never have found out, and he'd be set for life. I couldn't believe the crap coming out of his mouth. I couldn't believe he didn't realize he had caused all of this by lying to them and treating me like garbage for years. His lack of self-awareness was both strange and frightening. It takes a lot of ego to entirely disavow responsibility for your own acts, right? Anyway, I did not react to any of his erratic texts, and he became increasingly desperate. In a matter of days, his communications progressed from begging to threatening. He said things such as, "If you don't help me, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a liar, and you'll regret this." This is ridiculous. He's clearly on a downward spiral, and he's now attempting to intimidate me into doing anything he wants. Unfortunately for him, I'm no longer terrified of him. I've dealt with enough of his bullshit to know he's just talking, so I'm not getting embroiled in his family drama again. I tried to dodge him by banning all of his new phone numbers and accounts, but I have a nagging sense he will not stop. He's already come to my place once, so what's keeping him from trying again? My husband and I have discussed getting a restraining order, but we are still deciding on the best course of action. I don't want things to become worse, but I also can't continue living like this. I can't keep worrying if Jake would show up out of nowhere with new demands or threats. If he shows up again and I refuse to do what he asks, will he harm me? He's clearly spinning and not in the best of moods, so I can't say for certain that he wouldn't. To make matters worse, I discovered that Jake's parents had been communicating with some mutual friends. Apparently, they now blame me for their family's disintegration. They believe I influenced Jake into concealing the truth, and that I am the reason they are cutting him off. I'm not sure where to start with that. Everyone in Jake's life seemed to be in utter denial about who he truly is, and I find myself caught in the center of their distorted reality. Anyway, I've been doing my best to ignore Jake's attempts to contact me, but I'm not sure how much longer I can avoid the problem. I just want to concentrate on my pregnancy and my life with Sam, but Jake is making it impossible to do so. He's not just trying to get back into his parents' good graces. He's also attempting to drag me down with him, and I won't allow that to happen. I haven't decided what to do yet, but I'm thinking about contacting his parents myself, not to aid Jake, but to set the record right once and for all. If they choose to blame me for their son's falsehoods, that is their choice, but I will not sit back and let them spread rumors about me. At the same time, I'm concerned that any interaction with them will only make matters worse. It seems like a lose-lose situation. So that's where things stand right now. Jake has gone from angry and blaming me to begging and threatening, and I'm not sure what his next move will be. I just hope he realizes I'm not going to aid him and backs off before things spiral out of control. I'll keep you all posted if anything else happens, but for now, I'm just figuring out my next steps. Thank you for your continued support. I never anticipated this problem to escalate so quickly, but it helps to know that I'm not alone in coping with it. I'll update again if Jake does anything else, which, let's be honest, he most likely will. Update 3. Hello, everyone. I have some bad and good news. The terrible news is, this will be my final update. I know many of you have been quite invested in my story, and I am grateful that so many of you have been checking in on me on a daily basis to see that my baby and I are safe. As for the good news, I'm finally free of Jake. After Jake's latest round of begging and threatening, I was beginning to worry. Sam, my husband, and I had been talking about moving for a long time, and with everything going on, we decided it was the right moment to go out of town and start over somewhere far away. We located a new apartment in a completely different state, packed up our belongings, and departed without telling anyone where we were going. I was just finished with the drama. Besides, I'm pregnant and needed to focus on myself and the kid. But immediately before we departed, something happened that I can't believe. Remember when Jake's parents blamed me for everything? It appears that they chose to approach Jake personally. I learned about this from one of Jake's cousins, who later became a close friend. Clearly, the confrontation was explosive. Jake originally attempted to blame me for everything and persuade his parents to continue their hatred for me in order to reclaim his money. But Jake's parents were adamant about finding out why he wanted the inheritance so severely. They believed they had helped prepare him for life. They found him a terrific job, bought him a house, paid off his mortgage, and advised him on how to invest in good assets to provide him with financial security. They eventually learned the truth from Jake. Jake had been lying to them about his finances for years. He informed them that he was saving money, working hard, and preparing to take over the family business. In truth, he was spending all of their money on frivolous activities such as online gambling and holidays with his cronies. He never told them about it and maintained the pretense of being a responsible son, to preserve his place in their estate. When his parents learned this, they were furious. They not only cut Jake off financially, but also officially disowned him. They told him they no longer wanted anything to do with him. The inheritance he was so determined to retrieve was gone. Jake's parents apparently spoke with their family first, who suggested that withholding him an inheritance was unnecessary. The family advocated confronting Jake to hear his version of the story and maybe reinstating him in the will if he admitted his mistakes. However, as Jake's parents learnt the whole truth, any chance of reconciliation was lost. I'm not sure what Jake is going to do now, but I'm pleased it's no longer my responsibility. From what I've heard, he's trying to figure out his next move. I wish him the best of success with it. After hearing all of this, I felt a lot of comfort. For years, I thought I was the one who had failed, that I hadn't done enough to make things right with Jake and his family. But now it's evident that Jake was hiding a lot more from everyone, including me. His parents finally recognized him for who he truly is, and it feels like karma has come full circle. As for Sam and me, we've adjusted into our new house in another state and are doing well. I feel much safer now that we are away from Jake and his turmoil. We added security cameras just in case, but there has been no trace of Jake or any other strange communications. We even obtained a restraining order before leaving to guarantee that he could not follow us or try anything else. It feels great to know that he can't come after us anymore. Oh, and here's the icing on top. Jake's parents actually contacted me. I received a note from them, through the same cousin who alerted me about the confrontation, apologizing for how they had treated me over the years. They said they had no idea Jake was lying to them and were sorry for everything they had put me through. I'm not sure whether I'll ever respond to them, but it was wonderful to receive some sort of apology after everything. It's incredible how much things have changed. Anyway, I'm relieved to be able to focus on my life without the weight of all this turmoil. Sam and I are very excited about our baby, and I'm pleased we're in a quiet place now to embrace this new chapter. The last few months have been extremely difficult, but I believe we've come out stronger. Thank you again to everyone who has supported me throughout this struggle. Your comments and advice gave me the strength to keep going, and I thank you more than you know. That's all for now. Now to the next story, Story 3. My laughter at my sister's tragedy. Baby name got me uninvited, sparked a family intervention, and saved my niece. Original post: my sister is due in early January and we're planning her baby shower for early December. She decided she wanted to use my mother's maiden name, Rafferty, as her daughter's name. Not a tragedy itself, and I guess it works as a unique name. But yesterday I texted my sister that I needed to get the custom items with my niece's name ordered ASAP so they would arrive in time for the shower. My sister then let me know they're going with an alternative spelling of Rafferty. I texted back, an alternative spelling? Of our mother's maiden name? My sister wants to spell it Rayfarty. So I sent back a bunch of laughing emojis and she asked, "What's so funny?" I tried to explain that no one will pronounce that as Rafferty and she'll probably get plenty of the same mispronunciations. She told me I was being ridiculous. I texted back, "My poor niece, little Miss Farty Ray?" I was uninvited to the shower and my mom told me today my sister doesn't want me as the godmother anymore. But, Ray Farty is really bad, isn't it? Someone needs to tell her, right? Some of OOP's comments Josh. Top comments, Barge G. Yup, it's Ray Farty, no matter what sis wants to believe. Oop. Thank you. Balloon Ship, Ray Farty. MGM, expected release 2025. A hard-boiled detective living and working in the heart of Pittsburgh's Sulphur District is tasked with investigating the theft of 12,000 durians. In an unexpected twist, the alleged mastermind of the crime, the CEO of Chipotle, was also Ray's high school chemistry teacher. Oop. OMG. I needed this? Estamos ready. That's terrible, she is going to hate her name. Out of curiosity, how old is your sister? Oop. My sister is 26. We both have fairly plain names and my sister was always jealous of people with more exotic names. She told my mom that spelling it Ray Farty will be obvious that it's pronounced Rafferty, but it makes it look more girly. I mean, yeah, girls fart too. Happy Big 3297, Rafferty comes under the category of names I wouldn't use. Not a big fan of surnames as first names, but which I can see tick some boxes that would make them appealing to some people. Honors your mom, sounds gender neutral, could use the nickname Raf. Ray Farty comes under the category of names that sound like jokes. No wonder you laughed. Do what you can to dissuade her, everyone's going to pronounce it as Farty. Oop, I agree, I wouldn't use it myself, but I get that it honors my mom and her family and it's not too out there. Thank God my mother wasn't born a Lewandowski, no offense to the Lewandowskis out there. My mom is mildly annoyed. She wants to honor her last name but totally respell it. But my mother's opinion is that it's my sister's child and no one but she and her husband really have a say in the name. Apparently my sister insists everyone will understand it as Rafferty and not Ray Farty, SMDH. What about BIL? I texted him last night to ask if he knew about the colorful respelling. Surprise, surprise, he hates it and immediately thinks Ray Farty, too. But he doesn't know how to approach it because my sister's pregnancy has been increasingly emotional and he's already walking on eggshells. Update post. I don't know if updates are allowed here, but here it is and sorry it's long and I've been having a hard time submitting it. Is there a character limit? I'll try posting some and put the rest in the comments. So we had an intervention on Ray Farty. I know everyone said to send a link to the original post to my sister to show her that 103% of the global population would call her daughter Ray Farty and that would be the easiest thing to do. But some commenters said some pretty gnarly things about my sister that she doesn't need to read and feel worse about herself. But I wanted to address a few things that came up. First, for those saying I shouldn't bother paying for the baby shower anymore, I had no plans to not continue to pay and help out. Disagreements and fighting aside, I love my sister and want her to go into motherhood filled with love and support, regardless of whether she wants my support or attendance at the event. Second, my sister's husband was made aware of the spelling change of Rafferty to Rayfarty about a month before my original post. He said he didn't think much of it until he saw it written down and immediately saw it as Ray Farty, too. He said her emotions had been getting worse throughout the pregnancy, and he didn't know how to approach her about going back to the original spelling. He had hoped that once she gave birth, all the hormones would somehow leave her body, she'd come to her senses, and it would be a non-issue. Third, a lot of you were lumping my mom in with my sister and said some pretty horrible things about her too. All my mom knew was from my sister calling her to complain that I laughed at her for slightly changing the spelling. My mom just assumed it was a minor change like Rafferty until I told her to grab a pen and paper and I'd spell it out for her. Once she saw it was Ray Farty, she was team save this child. The rest of the saga is in the comments. Continued. The rest. Now for those of you who told me I didn't have any tact and my reaction was mean, my reaction was because 1. People would call the poor girl Ray Farty her entire life for the sake of my sister being quirky. 2. Pregnancy brain aside, surely my sister would realize her child will be called Ray Farty once it's pointed out, have a laugh, change her mind, and this will end up being a funny story to tell at her daughter's future wedding or something. And 3. My sister is a bit of a joker so I also initially thought she was just pulling a prank or joking. But if she was joking, she took the joke really, really far. She spent $400 on a mural painted on one wall in the nursery. She wanted to debut the finished nursery to everyone at the baby shower, including her husband, who was forbidden to see it beforehand, that had Ray Farty incorporated into it that now needs to be repainted. She also bought herself a birthing gift? Is this even a thing? She'd have my brother-in-law present to her in front of everyone at the hospital. A 900+ gold bracelet with R, A, E, F, A, R, T, and Y charms. The baby book also has Ray Farty embroidered on the cover. I contacted my sister's best friend Katie, not her real name, If my sister has told her anything about the spelling change. She found out about Ray Farty after the blow-up with my sister, as my sister wanted to get Katie on her side. Katie, who's a teacher, was equally horrified about the spelling and told me this is the worst attempt at a creative name she's ever seen. The intervention of sorts, the Farty Party, if you will, included me, my sister, her husband, his mother and father, my mother and Katie. My sister refused to believe anyone could possibly see Ray Farty as Ray Farty, and that we were just mad that she was taking creative license and that everyone does that nowadays. My sister said children are not that cruel to bully her daughter for her name, and Katie said plenty of kids are cruel enough and the others would join in so they're not singled out themselves. My sister countered that as long as all the adults are pronouncing it correctly that it'll be no problem, and Katie told her that not only would the adults not know how to pronounce it to begin with, but that as long as fart is in the name, kids will latch right onto that. I was happy Katie was there because she's shared interesting names her students have had over the past few years, so I knew her opinion on this would probably be the only one to sway her. My sister cried for about 10 minutes and finally agreed to entirely change the name because even Rafferty was tainted because we had all ruined it for her. We told her to take her time to consider a new name. She told us she still wanted to honor my mother, and she suggested she'd combine my mother's first name with her mother-in-law's name and created a name on the spot that included a crass term for a lesbian. When my mother pointed that out, she started crying again and accused us of not letting her be a mom, and her husband suggested we leave it for now and we should all go and give her space. It's been radio silence until my sister texted me a couple of hours ago that she and her husband landed on Theodora and she is absolutely in love with it. She even decided by my unborn niece looks like a Theodora in the ultrasounds. She got those creepy 3D ones done where every baby looks like the same copper potato. I replied that that was lovely and that I'm so happy she's happy. It's not my taste, but at least it's not Theodora or some crap like that. So there you go. My niece has been saved from being called Ray Farty. I'm invited to the baby shower again, and I know this is just a little blip with my relationship to my sister and we'll be fine, but Katie will be taking over as godmother, which is fine by me. I can always be godmother to their next child, who will probably be named something like Tiramisu. Thank you all for seeing the same thing I did and letting me know stopping Ray Farty from coming into existence was the right thing to do. Some of Ope's comments. Commenter. She also bought herself a birthing gift. Is this even a thing? She'd have my brother-in-law present to her in front of everyone at the hospital. What the actual fuck? Silly name aside, what is this? Some kind of social media fueled, look at me and how wonderful I am to get a gift as a reward for giving birth. This feels very tacky to me. The whole push present concept gives me the ick. Oop. I agree. I've never heard of this before and it seems crazy. But also, if I ever ruin my body and push out a watermelon, I'd kinda want a reward too, though. Commenter. Pretty please tell us the amalgamation of her mother and MIL's names. Ope. There's probably no anonymity left on this situation, so here it goes. My mom is Leslie. Sister's MIL is Yvonne. The name was Les Yvonne. Pronounced Les Yvonne, like my niece is the lesbian baroness of some German village. I'll have the staff prepare the Birkenstocks for Les Yvonne Fartenberg's arrival. New update post. Title, Ray Farty has made it to the party. I don't know if you remember my post from a few weeks back about my sister wanting to name my niece Rafferty, pronounced Rafferty and not at all like Ray Farty. My niece has been born 2 weeks earlier than expected, but she is healthy and home now. When my sister first held her, she said, "She's so adorable," and got an idea. She wanted to change from Theodora to Theodorable. Thankfully my BIL put his foot down. He did give her carte blanche on the middle name. When it was supposed to be Rafferty, they went with Rose to counterbalance Rafferty being different. Now that Theodora was the normal name, and because my sister just cannot not be extra, she chose Jacksonville. Theodora Jacksonville. A Ray Farty Rose by any other name would smell as sweet. We are not from Florida. BIL is not from Florida. I don't think my sister's ever been to Florida, much less to Jacksonville. I asked her how she came up with it and she said she always liked geographical names, which is news to me because I specifically remember a conversation about names months ago and she said she hated when parents name their kids place names like Camden or Brooklyn because they're trying way too hard. But you do you, Ray Farty's mom. Also, our city has a pretty sizable Polish-American population and people will certainly try to pronounce it like it's a Polish last name, but at least the craziness is confined to the middle name. And there's no gas or slurs involved. Some of OOP's comments, that person you don't know, thanks for the update on Ray Farty. At least it's a middle name, and thank goodness Bill stopped the other craziness. Oh. Props to my BIL this time around. He said the look on the nurse's face when my sister suggested Theodorable was all he needed. LOL, capable box. 8785. The entire internet remembers Rayfordie. Your sister is a legend, but that middle name though, a full-on tragedy. Oop. When we heard the name, my mother warned me, let's not go through this again, it's just the middle name. So I behaved myself. Broadway Girl 27, does your sister understand the legacy she has created? Oh. A few people know about the post, but I don't think she does, or is too embarrassed to admit she knows. But she's not really on social media much except for Water Talk vids. Editor's note, Water Talk is people sharing recipes for flavored water. But sometimes no water is involved or it is a monstrosity posing as water. Curtis Connor did a video on it if you want to find out more, but regardless, it's certainly a more niche community. Miranda524. It has even made its way to TikTok. OP. Suli, she must know by now. Sorry not sorry, I did what I needed to do to save Miss Farty Ray. Now, on to the next story, story 4. My family tried to ruin my wedding. Am I the asshole for organizing a luxury cruise for my birthday and not inviting my parents or siblings? I, a 28-year-old male, work as a medical device development engineer for a large healthcare organization. Honestly, I never expected to find myself in this predicament. For context, I've been leading a groundbreaking initiative to create a new cardiac monitoring system that is transforming how we follow heart problems in real time. The technique we developed has the potential to save thousands of lives by detecting cardiac irregularities hours before a severe incident. Our team's work has been published in numerous leading medical journals, and we just received a renowned Industry Innovation Award. Professionally, my life is flourishing. However, my familial situation is very different. That disparity has never been more clear than today, as I face what is perhaps the most important decision I've ever had to make about my familial relationships. I'm the middle child in a household with 3 siblings. My older brother Alex, 32 million, works as a cardiac surgeon at a famous hospital and is the perfect child. Sophia, 16F, my younger sister, is the baby of the family, and she is always showered with affection. Every year, their birthdays are huge celebrations. For Alex's last birthday, our parents leased out an entire premium restaurant, hosted over 100 guests, and spared no expense. When Sophia turned 16, they hired a live band and turned our backyard into a festival venue. I remember how they spent weeks preparing every detail, from creating custom decor to hiring a professional photographic crew. Let me paint you a picture of how I grew up. Every success I made was overshadowed by those of my siblings. I recall sitting at the dinner table on my 8th birthday, hearing my family talk about Alex's soccer game as if it were any other day. They had thrown him a massive superhero-themed party 2 weeks prior, complete with a magician, special costumes, and party favors that outperformed any item I possessed. The entire neighborhood was there, kids running around in capes and masks, and my parents were beaming with pride at their magnificent firstborn. When I eventually got up the confidence to ask if they had forgotten my birthday, my mother barely looked up from her phone and said, "Oh, sorry honey, we've been so busy with Alex's tournament schedule and Sophia's dance performance. We will make it up to you next year." She returned to displaying everyone photos from Alex's party on her phone. I recall sitting there, staring at my untouched food and feeling invisible in my own home. They never made it up to me. Not that year or any other year. The pattern persisted throughout my childhood. When I was 13, we were enjoying a family meal when the waitress inquired about any upcoming birthdays. My mother actually chuckled and said, "Oh, just his, but we aren't doing anything major. He's not the type to require much." Everyone at the table giggled, as if it were a light-hearted joke. When I think back to that moment, the shame still burns in my chest. Later following year, they threw Sophia a half-birthday party because she was disappointed that her birthday fell during the summer while school was out. The gap wasn't limited to birthdays. Throughout my childhood, every request I made was answered with excuses, yet my siblings received whatever they want. When I was 10, Alex begged for the most recent game console. Our parents went 3 hours to another city to get it, stating, "Nothing's too much trouble for our future doctor." A few months later, I requested the local store for a scientific kit, which I planned to utilize for the school science fair. My mother disregarded it, stating, "That's too expensive right now." The following week, they purchased Sophia an iPhone simply because she mentioned wanting one in passing. They were not isolated incidents. Every accomplishment in my life was considered as an afterthought. I graduated from high school as valedictorian and was accepted into one of the top engineering institutions in the country. Most parents would be thrilled, right? I scarcely acknowledged it. My father simply responded, "That's nice," while gazing at his phone. My mother's only reply was, "Well, engineering was your backup since you didn't try for medical school like Alex." Alex was accepted to medical school the same month, and they celebrated with a wedding reception-themed party. They hired caterers, live music, and even had special decorations printed with the words, "Future Dr. Alexander" on them. 2 years later, when Sophia graduated from high school with ordinary grades, they hired a professional photographer, made a tribute video, and bought her a brand new automobile as a graduation present. My college graduation gift? A gift card to Best Buy. Now, let me tell you about my present career success, not to brag, but to demonstrate the stark contrast in how my family views accomplishments. For the past 2 years, I've led a team of 15 engineers in the development of a groundbreaking heart monitoring gadget. This is not just another medical device. We're talking about technology that has the potential to dramatically alter our approach to heart attack prevention. The device employs advanced AI algorithms to detect small cardiac problems up to 24 hours before a big incident, allowing clinicians critical time to treat. Our initiative has been highlighted in 3 major medical journals, and we recently received the Healthcare Innovation Award, one of the most distinguished accolades in our field. What's with the irony? Our gadget has the potential to benefit patients like the ones Alex treats, but he has never shown any interest in learning about my work. Throughout the award ceremony, my entire team's families were present, celebrating with champagne and taking proud photos. My parents? They did not even respond to the invitation. Last month, at our weekly family video call, I attempted to inform everyone about the honor. My mom interrupted me mid-sentence to ask Alex about his most recent operation schedule. They then spent 20 minutes admiring Sophia's Instagram images from her recent weekend excursion to the beach. My achievements were not even acknowledged. When I tried to bring it up again, my father simply said, "That's nice, son," before shifting the conversation to Alex's imminent department head nomination. I tried talking to them about this trend several times throughout the years. Each attempt has resulted in dismissal or gaslighting. "You're just too sensitive," my mother would say, rolling her eyes. "We treat all of our children equally," my father mumbled, avoiding eye contact as usual. Alex would smirk and add, "Maybe if you did something actually important," while Sophia would sigh deeply and label me an attention seeker. Despite their negligence, I've managed to have a prosperous life. I have a great career, good friends, and an amazing girlfriend, Stephanie, 27F, who has been really supportive throughout. She has seen personally how my family's treatment impacts me, even if I try to hide it. Last month, at a meal with her family, her mother made a greater production about my birthday than my own family has ever done. She prepared my favorite cake, which she recalled from a casual talk months earlier, and gave me a nice work-related gift. It was moving, but it also made me realize how much I had missed out on. That's what prompted my current decision. My birthday is in 3 weeks, and instead of preparing for another disappointment, I'm taking charge. I've booked a luxury cruise and organized a lavish celebration, not just any cruise. I have reserved a luxury suite package on one of the most prominent cruise lines. The program includes unique dining experiences, spa treatments, and private shore excursions. I'm inviting all of our extended family, my aunts, uncles, and cousins, as well as my close friends. The guest list contains approximately 50 people, all of whom have expressed an interest in my life and achievements over the years. But here's the kicker: I'm intentionally excluding my immediate family. The invitations have already been sent, and I have something special planned for the major celebration dinner. I'm going to show a slideshow, and not just any slideshow. I've accumulated images and memories of all the birthdays they missed, accomplishments they overlooked, and occasions they made me feel invisible. Each image will be accompanied by a related image of how they celebrated Alex or Sophia on similar occasions. Is this petty? Maybe. But it feels necessary. I've also prepared a presentation about our medical gadget project, not to brag, but to demonstrate what I've accomplished while my family was too preoccupied with Alex's medical career. The gadget has already been licensed for clinical trials, and preliminary findings indicate that it could lower cardiac death rates by up to 30%. This might potentially save thousands of lives. The word spread through the family grapevine, and the emotions have been intense. My Aunt Susan, who has always been more aware of family dynamics, immediately responded yes, and called to say she is proud of me for sticking up for myself. Several cousins have also offered their support, stating that they have noticed how I have been treated over the years but were unsure how to handle it. However, not everyone has been supportive. Some relatives describe me as petty and immature. My mother has been blowing up my phone, leaving voicemails alternating between guilt-tripping, "How could you do this to your mother after all we've sacrificed for you?" and threats. "You'll regret this behavior, young man." My father wrote his normal passive-aggressive text about how I am tearing the family apart and creating unnecessary drama. Alex called me childish and advised me to grow up and accept that some people just achieve more in life. Sophia wrote a cryptic, hostile social media post about attention-seeking behavior and toxic siblings who can't handle others' success. But my friends and Stephanie absolutely support me. My best friend from college, who has seen my family dynamics for years, said something that really resonated. Sometimes it takes a great act to disrupt destructive patterns. You've attempted to talk to them quietly for years. Maybe they'll finally listen. Stephanie has been especially fantastic throughout this. She's helped me organize every aspect of the cruise, from the meals to the decorations. She reminded me that this isn't about vengeance, it's about finally standing up for myself and refusing to be the forgotten child any longer. Her encouragement has shown me what a good family dynamic should look like. The cruise is booked, invites have been sent, and there is no going back now. Most of the visitors have already said yes, with many expressing enthusiasm for both the event and what it represents. Some relatives are plainly split between wanting to support me and being concerned about the potential for conflict with my parents. Surprisingly, most people are still opting to come. I created a special Instagram hashtag for the event and began posting teases about the approaching celebration. My mother saw these posts, despite being blocked. She created a bogus account and called my aunt in tears, screaming that I was publicly humiliating the family. Everyone understands the hypocrisy of her now caring about family disgrace after years of publicly ignoring me. I understand that this may appear radical to some people. Perhaps it is. But after 28 years of being treated as an afterthought, of seeing my siblings lauded while I am disregarded, of having my accomplishments discounted and my feelings questioned, it seems necessary. This isn't just a birthday celebration anymore. It's about taking control of my story and telling my family that I'm not going to be the invisible middle child any longer. The cruise will set off in 3 weeks. Half of me is delighted to finally celebrate myself properly, but another half is concerned about the consequences. Some friends say I should have broken contact discreetly rather than making a statement, but I believe I needed to do so, not just for me, but for any middle kid who has ever felt ignored. Am I taking things too far? Should I have taken a less dramatic approach to this situation? The cruise is paid for, and the majority of guests have confirmed, but I'm still wondering if I'm burning bridges that I might wish to cross again in the future. I would welcome any suggestions, especially from individuals who have experienced similar familial situations. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the cruise birthday celebration, and I need to tell you what happened because things have escalated beyond my expectations. The cruise itself was amazing. Almost everyone who had RSVP'd turned up, around 45 people in total, including the majority of our extended family and close friends. I presented my slideshow during the first night's welcome dinner in the ship's premium restaurant. The crowd fell silent as photos appeared on the screen. Empty chairs at my childhood birthday dinners juxtaposed with Alex's grandiose festivities. My overlooked academic successes next to Sophia's recognized occasions. What I didn't expect was my Aunt Carol to burst into tears halfway through, claiming she had never realized the enormity of the disparity. Several additional relatives stated that they had seen the unequal treatment but had not realized how systematic it was until they saw it set out chronologically. The presentation on my medical gadget project garnered a resounding response. My uncle Robert, who works in hospital administration, even approached me about deploying our monitoring system at his facility. It's funny how my professional accomplishments suddenly become impressive when validated by others. But this is where things became intense. On the second day of the vacation, my mother convinced the cruise line to let her board at our first port call. She stated she was a surprise visitor invited to the celebration. Security let her through because she had images of me on her phone that proved she was my mother. She stormed into our lunch gathering, mascara flying, yelling about how I was attempting to turn the family against her. "After all we've done for you?" she shouted in front of everyone. "You ungrateful and hateful child." Stephanie attempted to intervene, but my mother turned on her, accusing her of poisoning her son against his family. The big shock came when my normally quiet Aunt Margaret rose up and challenged my mother. "Helen," she continued firmly, "we have all seen you prefer Alex and Sophia for years. We said nothing since we did not want to intervene. But this is over now." Several more relatives joined in, expressing their own views on unfair treatment throughout the years. My mother left in tears, but the drama hadn't ended. That evening, Alex and Sophia carried out a concerted social media onslaught. They shared childhood images with notes criticizing ungrateful siblings and attention-seeking behavior. However, it backfired terribly. People began commenting with their own insights about how I had been handled differently throughout the years. The cruise lasted 3 more days, then something unexpected happened. Without my immediate family around, I experienced what genuine family support is like. My cousins shared anecdotes about their own experiences with partiality. Uncle James, whom I had always assumed was distant, confessed that he had followed my career via business publications and was truly happy of my accomplishments. When we returned, I saw over 30 missed calls from my parents and a lengthy email from my father. For the first time, he acknowledged the inequality in how they treated us, but in a way that made matters worse. We focused more on Alex because he was following the family medical tradition and on Sophia because she needed extra support. You were always so independent and capable, we thought you didn't need the attention. The fallout has persisted. Yesterday, my mother arrived at my office, causing a disturbance in the foyer. She requested to meet with me, telling the security guard how I was breaking her heart and destroying our family. My colleagues witnessed the entire incident, and my supervisor later summoned me in to make sure I was okay. Surprisingly, he recounted his own experience breaking free from poisonous family dynamics and expressed his entire support. Stephanie's family has been fantastic throughout this. Her parents asked me over for supper last night and told me they consider me a member of their family. Her father even admitted that he wishes he'd had the fortitude to challenge his own family's partiality when he was young. The most unexpected development came from my younger relatives. Several of them have contacted me to say that seeing me stand up for myself has given them the confidence to handle similar difficulties in their own family relationships. My cousin Jenny even included our narrative into her psychology class presentation on family systems and partiality. Looking ahead, I've resolved to stick to the restrictions I've set. I'm not fully cutting off touch, but I'm no longer willing to be the forgotten child. I've blocked my siblings on social media and created email filters for my parents. My new policy is simple: I will only interact with family members who respect me and acknowledge their previous behavior. Stephanie and I are considering moving in together, possibly to a different city where her employer has an office. The distance may be beneficial, allowing everyone time to process and reflect. Thank you to everyone who has advised me on this problem. The trip may have appeared to be an extreme gesture, but it brought concerns to light that had been festering for decades. Sometimes you need a major moment to break old habits. The next post will most likely come after my parents' next wedding anniversary event, which I have already decided not to attend. Change is difficult, but important. Update 2. It has been 6 months since my last post, and I can't believe I'm writing this, but the situation has worsened much worse. What's the biggest news? Stephanie and I are engaged. What should have been a happy occasion has turned into another family drama. Following the cruise incident, I had little contact with my immediate family, preferring to focus on my relationship with Stephanie. The suggestion came at an ideal time, during a weekend trip to showcase our medical product at a healthcare conference. She's been my rock during all of this family drama. However, things turned ugly during our venue tour last weekend. We were touring our third potential wedding destination, a lovely historic building with a garden ceremony area. Halfway through the trip, I heard my mother's voice echoing down the corridor. They had somehow learned about our venue tour schedule. Later, I realized that my cousin Lauren had unintentionally disclosed it in the family group chat. My parents arrived with Alex and Sophia in tow, like some sort of intervention team. My mother immediately began telling the venue coordinator about her idea for the wedding, completely ignoring Stephanie and me. When I firmly said that they had not been invited and needed to leave, my mother burst into tears in front of the venue personnel and other couples who were visiting the space. What occurred next still seems strange. Alex, the responsible older brother, attempted to pull me away for a family discussion. When I declined, he remarked, "This is what happens when you let the middle child make important decisions." Sophia was shooting everything with her phone, perhaps for a dramatic social media post. The venue planner, bless her heart, quickly recognized the situation and had security escort them out, but not before my mother yelled that she would never forgive this betrayal, and that I was breaking your father's heart all over again. Here's the thing, they didn't just come across us. They had obviously planned this. They brought printed images from my childhood of good family occasions, which they planned to exhibit to the venue workers. My mother even brought her old wedding album and discussed family traditions that we needed to incorporate. After they left, we discovered that they had already visited our other 2 potential wedding locations earlier that week, informing the staff that they were the key decision makers. They even attempted to put down deposits to secure the dates. Stephanie was naturally shaken. Her family was appalled when they learned what had transpired. Her father, who is generally very polite, called my father immediately to inform him that their behavior was unacceptable. This sparked more controversy, with my father accusing Stephanie's family of stealing his son. We have recently chosen to drastically rethink our wedding arrangements. Neither of the venues on our original list will be used. We're now looking at venues outside of our area, and we've engaged a wedding planner who specializes in dealing with delicate family circumstances. She is putting in place stringent security measures and a thorough guest screening process. What's the silver lining to all of this? Our bond has only gotten stronger. Stephanie and I are more confident than ever that we are making the proper decision to begin our lives together away from poisonous family relationships. I've also received unexpected help from my colleagues. My employer, remembering the recent event at our office, has approved additional security measures at work. He has even volunteered to host our wedding on his vacation property if we choose a fully private setting. The difficult element isn't the drama itself. It's recognizing that my wedding day, one of life's most important occasions, is being turned into yet another battleground for my family's turmoil. But this time, I am not backing down. Stephanie and I deserve to spend our day the way we want. We're going forward with our plans, but with increased security and an extremely selective guest list. Our wedding will be a celebration of love and happiness, not just another stage for family drama. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I'd like to explain what happened at our wedding. This will be my final update since, following what happened, I've made a definitive choice about my family relationships. The wedding day began nicely. We found a stunning private estate 3 states away, hired security, and implemented stringent guest screening. Stephanie looked amazing, and our closest friends and selected family were present to support us. The morning preparations went well, and Stephanie's family made everyone feel loved and included. Despite all of our efforts, my mother was able to enter just as the officiant was about to begin the ceremony. The doors flew open, and my mother dashed down the aisle, my father trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. What came next was bizarre. Instead of the standard "I object" moment, my mother launched a full-fledged show about how ungrateful I was. She had prints of family portraits, which she began handing to stunned guests as a bizarre wedding favor. What truly crossed the line was when she turned to Stephanie and remarked, "Good luck on this one. He's been bitter his entire life." But this is where things changed. Instead of letting this wreck our day, I finally mustered the courage to speak all I'd been holding back. I came up and quietly informed my mother. "This is not about you. It never was. This refers to your incapacity to love your children equally. Today is not about the past. It is about my future with Stephanie." The security team moved to escort my parents out, but my mother had not finished. She turned to the guests and began divulging sensitive family facts, attempting to embarrass me. That's when Stephanie's father intervened. He stepped between my parents and us, with serene power, saying, "You have made your point. Now, leave my children alone." The term "children" had a strong impact. In that moment, I understood I'd discovered what I'd been hunting for all along, a family willing to adore me. After being escorted away, something unexpected occurred. Several guests, even distant cousins who had watched my family's behavior over the years, spoke up to express their observations. My cousin's wife, a family therapist, discreetly informed me that my mother's behavior exhibited classic indicators of narcissistic family dynamics. We proceeded with the ceremony, which was magnificent. Stephanie's brother delivered a heartfelt tribute at the reception. He discussed how family is more than simply DNA, but also about individuals who celebrate your accomplishments and support you during difficult times. The next morning, my father called. For the first time in his life, he admitted their favoritism, but in a way that made everything plain. He responded, "We only pushed Alex and Sophia more since you were so capable on your own. You must understand, it was easy to concentrate on them." That was it. That admission of taking the easiest road rather than being fair parents solidified my decision. I'm done trying to understand or repair this connection. I'm over expecting they'll change or suddenly become the parents I needed. I have officially changed my phone number. Our new house address is not listed. I took a promotion that puts me in charge of our company's West Coast expansion, which means we'll be moving across the nation. Stephanie's employer also has an office there, and her family has already made plans to visit. The medical device initiative continues to save lives. Last week, we received statistics indicating that our technology had avoided over 200 possible cardiac incidents. Alex still works at the same hospital that rejected our device implementation proposal, which is ironic given that it could have helped his patients. Thank you to everyone who has been following my story. Your support gave me the courage to speak up for myself and set boundaries. To anyone dealing with similar family dynamics, you deserve to be honored, you deserve to be seen. Sometimes the family you choose is more significant than the one you were born into. This will be my final update because there is nothing else to say. I'm not angry anymore, I am not hurt, I'm just finished. My new family, Stephanie, her family, our friends, and those who truly care about us, is my primary priority right now. Walking away from a situation is sometimes the healthiest option. It is not about vengeance or punishment. It is about choosing serenity, joy, and surrounding oneself with others who actually appreciate your existence. Now to the next story 5. My kids sided with their unfaithful mom, took jobs from her new husband, excluded me from their weddings, and cut contact for 8 years. 8 years ago, I, 56 million, discovered that my wife, Marie, 52F, was cheating on me with one of her college acquaintances. When I eventually caught them, they'd been having an affair for about a year. When I found out, I immediately moved out of my house and filed for divorce. We had previously been having problems in our marriage because she didn't think I was making enough money as a high school baseball coach. Despite my best efforts, she continued to moan about everything. We fought constantly, and in my mind, filing for divorce was not a tough option. Our 2 children had already moved out by that point, so I had no reason to stay. Unfortunately, the divorce destroyed my relationship with my children as well. For whatever reason, they resolved to support their mother. Initially, they attempted to persuade me to be kind with her because she had been a stay-at-home mom for a long period. They attempted to tell me that she must have been tired with her monotonous life. In addition, after they had moved out, we began squabbling over everything. Naturally, she was dissatisfied, and I was having financial difficulties. I couldn't understand why my children were trying so hard to persuade me to forgive Marie, especially since I was experiencing the same issues she was. However, I had not gone out of my way to cheat on her. In fact, after every disagreement we had, I would try to make amends and make her feel special in some way. Clearly, none of this meant anything to her. My children were pleading with me to give her another chance, which made me very unhappy. I ended up battling with them about it as well, and for a time, they cut me out of their lives. After the divorce was finalized, I began to feel quite lonely, especially since Marie remarried the man with whom she had been having an affair only 2 months later. I wasn't conversing with my children at the time, but I tried to reach out to them. They did pardon me, but I believe they said it just for the sake of it. I don't believe they truly forgave me at the time because they did not ask me to do any of their milestones for the next few years. Indeed, until earlier this year, I had little contact with my children. The only reason they're trying to get along with me right now is that I created my own business with a couple of my buddies a few years ago, and it only started taking off recently. I'm doing well for myself, and I'm presuming that's why they're here. For context, I had spent a lengthy time as a high school sports coach. Unfortunately, I was extremely underpaid and overworked. I had a buddy who worked at another school, and we were both struggling financially. While trying to figure out our retirement plans, we decided to talk to a few other people and try to open our own institution. That way, we could continue coaching children, which we were very excellent at and had a lot of experience with, while also turning it into a company. That'd be our retirement plan. We teamed up with another business-savvy acquaintance to launch this venture. We didn't expect much at the moment, but we're happy to say that we're doing well for ourselves now. Our facility has grown fairly popular, and we are considering expanding soon. I'm guessing my kids heard about it because they contacted me earlier this year and began attempting to get on my good side. Initially, I was overjoyed that kids were attempting to involve me more in their life. I assumed they'd finally come to their senses. I didn't suspect they had hidden agendas. However, a few days ago, my 2 children, Gavin and Hannah, paid me a visit. Gavin married 6 years ago, and Hannah married 4 years ago. I was not invited to either wedding because they informed me that their mother would be present with her husband, which would be extremely awkward for everyone. I was quite upset about it, but they said it couldn't be helped because the wedding would be too big. They vowed to make things up to me at some point, but they never did. Like a fool, I kept expecting for them to recognize that I was just as much of a parent to them as their mother. I thought it had finally happened. But when they came to see me lately and started talking about how they'd heard my business was doing well, and then suggested I spend more time with my grandchildren and help them out financially, I knew what was going on. It was tough not to be upset with them at the time, but I promised them I would surely think about it. They appeared satisfied, so they left. After they left, I blocked them everywhere since I suspected they were attempting to defraud me. Gavin has 2 children, the eldest is 5 years old and the youngest is 1 year old. Hannah's daughter was born 6 months ago, as far as I know. Guess what? I have not met any of my grandchildren yet. My first grandchild was born 5 years ago, and I still haven't met him. Of course it hurts. I've tried to persuade Gavin to bring over his children or ask me over so I could meet them. When Hannah's baby was born, I attempted to meet her as well, but they consistently declined. It was always the same excuse: Marie and her husband would be present and did not want things to become unpleasant. It stung to have to comprehend and let go all the time. They finally want to offer me the opportunity to play grandfather, and I'm guessing it's all because things aren't going well for them financially. I had no idea about any of this before, which is why I didn't completely remove them out of my life. Just to be clear, I am not in close contact with the majority of my extended family, and I am not a fan of family gossip. But when my children came to see me after so many years and began to be polite to me, I sensed something was wrong. So, once they went, I blocked them. Just to satiate my curiosity, I decided to ask around about what my children were up to. That's how I learned that they've been experiencing financial difficulties for the previous few years. Furthermore, their relationship with their stepfather is no longer all sunshine and rainbows. This surprised me because, based on the images they'd posted after their mother remarried, it appeared that the family was really close to the guy. Apparently, things are going bad since he intends to sell his company. They sell furniture, and once Marie married him, my children began working at his company. I don't want to say it because I'm not sure, but I believe that's why they were so ready to support their mother during the divorce. They must have felt that if they could persuade me to ease up on their mother instead of dragging out the divorce, they would be guaranteed a position in their stepfather's company. Basically, Marie's affair partner had bought them out, something I had never suspected. The difficulty is that the company hasn't done particularly well in recent years. Marie's husband wants to sell the business, but my children want him to keep it. He owns the company, so he stands to earn the most from the transaction, and he's fortunate enough to have found a buyer right now. My children, on the other hand, are opposed to the purchase because, despite receiving a percentage of the earnings as stockholders and high management workers, they will lose their jobs. They want to make a long-term plan for themselves. It's a complex situation, and many members of the family are aware of it due to Marie's tendency to speak out. She's been venting about this to everybody who will listen, so it's no surprise that their family is arguing right now. I'm guessing that's why Gavin and Hannah approached me for aid. It's no secret that we are doing well. We're running commercials, and word of mouth has been fantastic for us. After gathering all of this information and meeting with a number of my family, I chose to keep my children blocked. I have no interest in their lives. They have shown no interest in me for the past 8 years. Even now, they're only here because they are in difficulty. It seems demeaning, and I feel like an idiot for expecting them to come to their senses and apologize to me. A few days after I blocked them, they returned to my door and demanded that I let them in. Even when I said I didn't want to talk to them, they pushed. I informed them that I had heard from the family about what was going on with them and their stepfather, and that I understood they were simply coming to seek financial assistance from me. I reminded them that the reason they left me in the first place was because their stepfather could provide them with stable employment and upper management positions that I couldn't. I called them sellouts. In reaction, they began accusing me of being insensitive and bitter. They stated they had no such plans and that they simply wanted to make things right with me. They stated they recognized that, at the end of the day, I was still their father, and they couldn't keep prioritizing Marie over me. They also indicated that the sole reason they had requested for financial assistance was for their children, not because I was doing well financially. They thought it was horrible that I had reached such a judgment after listening to a lot of no-good gossipmongers in the family. This happened 2 days ago, and I've been quite distressed by it all. It's become so terrible that I have to take time off work because I can't stop thinking about what to do. Logically and intellectually, I believe the rest of the family is not lying to me. They would gain nothing from it. Also, my family has always been kind to me, even since my divorce. They've always looked out for me, which I greatly appreciate. So, I don't believe they are lying or gossiping. They're simply answering my questions because I was the one who investigated the case. That being said, I'm not sure if I should give my kids an opportunity to work things out with me. Should I just give them a little cash help? After all, I am earning well enough to support them, and I am very certain they are not looking for a long-term commitment. They'll probably acquire jobs after the company is sold. I presume they are simply expecting me to be their safety net because of their children. I haven't actually spoken with them what kind of money they want. Whether it's an investment, a loan, or simply goodwill. In any case, I am aware that financial assistance will be provided. I feel as if I don't want to pass up an opportunity to reconnect with my children and create a relationship with my grandchildren just because of this. The way they discussed the situation during their visit the other day has thrown me off guard, and I'm not sure what to think anymore. I've been continually anxious, and I'm wondering whether I'm making the worst mistake of my life by shutting out my children. Perhaps I am being insensitive and ungrateful, as they stated. If I let my ego get the best of me, I doubt I'll ever have another chance to work things up with my family. The only thing holding me back right now is my fear of being used, which I absolutely do not want. I really don't know what to think anymore. I feel lost, And I don't think I have anyone I can freely discuss this with. So here I am, an old man attempting to figure out life after being mostly alone since my divorce. As much as I hate to admit it, I miss my children a lot and want them in my life. However, I am unsure if this is the best approach. So, am I wrong for not wanting to be financially involved with my children? Update 1. Thank you for your comments. I guess I needed a reality check since, in desperation, I had considered talking to my children. But now I realize I'm being exploited, and I shouldn't be such a doormat to them. That is what I have been all these years. They would speak to me as if they were doing me a favor, but they would always ignore me because they preferred Marie and her husband. Now that I understand why people preferred him, I don't think there's any going back. I even discussed it with my friends at work. They were aware of the history, but when I informed them of the current situation and what I had recently discovered, they were outraged. Initially, they assumed that Marie had misled my children, which is why they did not want to communicate with me. They believed there might still be some room for reconciliation. However, now that they know my children were technically bought out by their stepfather, they decided there was no going back. They instructed me to keep my kids blocked for my own self-respect and sanity, because if I didn't, they would undoubtedly burn a hole in my pocket. I'm still not sure what type of money they wanted. Even if it was a tiny sum, I don't feel obligated to repay them. Even if they were telling the truth the other day and asked for the money for their children rather than themselves, I still don't owe it to them. They've never brought my grandchildren over to see me, nor have they let me visit them. So, why would I connect with anyone? I know that seems insensitive, but it is true. I can't start feeling horrible for every child I've never met and giving money out as if it were charity. If this makes me appear insensitive and resentful in their eyes, so be it. I don't care, and I don't have to justify myself to them. I'm just going to stay far away from them and live my life. It will hurt, but I don't think it can hurt any more than it has in the last 8 years. If I can put up with that without complaining, I believe I can deal with the consequences of cutting them off now. At least this time, it will be my decision, and I will have control of the situation rather than them treating me poorly. Thank you for hearing me out. I really needed to get my frustrations out someplace. If anything changes in the scenario, I'll keep you updated. Thank you again for your support. Update 2. Hello, it has been 2 weeks since I last provided an update. I stated that if there were any developments, I would publish here and keep you updated. While I was at work yesterday, Gavin and Sarah arrived with my grandchildren and demanded to see me. I was occupied with a training session for a handful of pupils. I usually don't take meetings around that time, so anyone who wants to meet with me has to wait. They allegedly refused to wait. I'm not sure why they anticipated special treatment, especially because nobody at work knew they were my kids. Even if they did, that would not qualify them for special treatment. Our receptionist alerted me of the problem and explained that they were unwilling to wait. I was annoyed, so I instructed security to accompany them to my office and make them wait there to avoid a commotion in the lobby. I then took my time getting through the training session. After having them wait for over half an hour, I returned to my office to meet them. It was petty, but they needed to understand that they couldn't just walk up at my business and expect me to drop everything to entertain them, no matter what time of day. When I arrived at my office, Gavin and Sarah were visibly unhappy. My grandchildren appeared bored and fussy. As soon as I walked in, they began lecturing me on the value of time and how rude it was of me to make them wait so long on purpose, especially because my grandchildren were with them. Their entitlement was quite unpleasant. I told them that I handled them the same way I would anyone who came to see me during a training session. If others could wait for me to finish my work before meeting with me, they could do the same. The fact that I had never been treated nicely by them before, let alone given special treatment while being their father, made their behavior even more upsetting. Their decision to bring their children was entirely their fault. This was a training institution, and I had a significant role here. If they couldn't take the fact that I was treating them like everyone else, they could leave. They simply waited because they wanted to. I had not forced them to stay. I had been pretty stern with them, and I could tell they were upset. But I think they wanted a favor from me and didn't want to make things worse for themselves. Instead, they swiftly shifted the subject and informed me that they had brought their children along so that I could meet them for the first time and begin forming a bond as their grandfather. It was quite difficult for me, but I had to shut that down. I told them I was going home because it was my last training session of the day and all I wanted to do now was relax. Besides, I knew exactly what they were attempting to do. They were using their grandchildren to get on my good side, and I wasn't going to fall for it. I informed them that using their children to gain access to me showed a lack of courage. It is unethical. They began defending themselves, stating that was not their goal. They said that they had merely brought the children to meet me. We ended up bickering about it because it was so clear that this was not coming from a place of genuine concern. They only wanted my money, which is why they were so desperate to get another shot. I could see straight through them. Regardless of how much they insisted, I told them it was too little, too late. I fell in love with my grandchildren right away. They're all gorgeous, and I wish we'd met under different circumstances. However, this is something their parents are to blame for. Following the fight, they insisted that I hear them out and allow them to explain their strategy, which required my money. I told them I was not interested. As the argument continued, they became increasingly frustrated. Gavin eventually lost his patience and began yelling at me. His ranting enraged the children, who began crying as a result of his harsh behavior. I tried to console the children while Gavin and Sarah continued to argue with me. It was so upsetting that I threatened to phone security and have them evicted from the building. I was sick of them, and I meant it. I believe they recognized it and eventually left. Before leaving, they told me I was heartless and that my ego would bring me down. But none of this mattered to me. I only wanted to go home and rest, so that's what I did. It has been 24 hours since then, and I still have not unblocked them. I don't intend to, especially given what happened yesterday. I don't think I need to. I'm finished. Update number 3. Hello. It's been 3 days since I last saw my children. I still haven't unblocked them, but they haven't stopped attempting to contact me. Earlier today, they sent me an email from a new address apologizing for all that had occurred recently. They confessed that this was not how they intended things to go, but they understood why I was furious with them. They were first annoyed by my behavior, despite their efforts to make things right with me. However, after some contemplation, they felt they deserved it. They also reinforced what I already knew, that everything I'd heard about them was true, not just rumors. They said they were astonished and offended when I accused them of preferring their stepfather over me because of the financial security he could provide. But, at the end of the day, they realized it was true and that they couldn't undo the past. They also recognized that by looking out for themselves, they had been really selfish, and that I deserved better. They stated I had every right to keep them out of my life, but their only condition was that I not exclude their children. They then outlined their plan. They wanted me to invest in a firm they were launching together. They couldn't stop their stepfather from selling his company because he was the principal owner, but they were now going it alone. To avoid endangering their own resources, they were considering bringing in a few investors, and I was obviously their first choice. They said they didn't get along with their stepfather anymore. After much thought, they recognized they had been selfish once more, attempting to enlist me as an investor without actually apologizing for their previous actions. They sent me this email to apologize and tell me that if I wanted to meet my grandchildren, I could phone them at any time and they would come over. They stated that they no longer wanted me to invest in their company and that it was fully up to me to decide. After receiving the email, I wasn't sure what to do. It appeared genuine, but I've been taken for a fool before and don't want it to happen again. However, I want to have a relationship with my grandchildren. I'll have to think about it, and whatever I decide, I'll share it here. I just need a vacation from everything right now. So, over the next few days, or perhaps weeks, I will not be posting as frequently. Update number 4. Hey, so I thought about it a lot, and now that it's been about 2 months since they last contacted me, I've decided to at least try to create a relationship with my grandchildren. I know it'll take a long time to reconnect with my children, but not with my grandchildren. I'm already 58, and I'm not getting any younger, therefore I don't want to lose any time or opportunities to spend with my family, no matter how minor. My grandchildren have already grown up without knowing their biological, actual grandpa. So, a few days ago, I finally responded to my children via that email address. I told them I'd be delighted to host them, their spouses, and the grandchildren for supper at my house this weekend. However, in the same email, I made it obvious that I would not be investing in their company. If they expected me to aid them financially at any time, they could forget it. I also told them that if this meant they wouldn't want to visit me, that was fine with me. I wanted to make my boundaries extremely clear. I wasn't going to let them breach them anymore. The tone of my email in the later section was rather severe, so I didn't expect them to respond the same day. Fortunately, they did. They informed me they didn't expect or want me to invest in their company, and that they didn't deserve it. They still wanted me to be able to connect with my grandchildren, so they gladly accepted my dinner invitation. So they ended up coming over for supper yesterday. We had a pretty good time. Their husbands are great individuals, and they all apologized for what had transpired in the past. They claimed they were looking forward to beginning afresh, and so am I. I really want to have a family again since it may be rather lonely. I'll be retiring soon, so now is a good opportunity to improve things. I'm so glad my children finally decided to contact me and do the right thing. Hopefully, things will improve for us in the future. Now to the next story 6. My niece moved in after her parents kicked her out and tried imposing rules in my house, so I taught her a tough lesson. Kesha is 14 years old and female. She is my husband's sister's daughter. She's become increasingly defiant, to the point where her own parents have kicked her out. She has been suspended from school twice this year and is on her way to being expelled. She was suspended twice for starting fights with other girls. She has a fiery temper for an 8th grader. Of course, her parents were outraged when she was sent home from school. But when they sat her down to discuss it, she ended up hitting her mother. Her father dragged her away and kicked her out. He informed her that she was not welcome to stay there until she got her act together, and that was the end of it. I believe Kesha spent the night at a friend's house before arriving on our doorstep the next day. My husband and I both work from home, so we were present when she arrived. We were initially perplexed because we had heard nothing about her suspension or the altercation with her parents. But, of course, we allowed her in, because she is family. She explained that the day before, her parents had kicked her out for no apparent reason. She said her mother had become physical with her and she was afraid, so she came to us. Even as she said all of this, we were doubtful. We knew Kesha had been on a cruel streak recently, so my husband snuck away to contact his sister and get the whole story. Of course, his sister gave him the entire truth. She claimed it broke their hearts to do it, but they didn't feel secure having her in the house anymore, so they kicked her out. My brother-in-law went on to say that he was tired of allowing her get away with her behavior. If she was going to learn, she needed to do it the hard way. My spouse has always had a sweet place for his niece. He couldn't help but invite her to stay with us temporarily. We don't have any children yet, so we have plenty of room for her to stay. I was concerned about the concept because I had no prior experience with children, let alone aggressive ones. But I decided that it was better for her to stay with us rather than with a random acquaintance until things between her and her parents calmed down. The first night went good. She was on her best behavior, and we had a lovely supper together. My husband and I had hoped her entire stay with us would be like this. We believed she could just need a pause to think things through, and that this would be beneficial to her. Unfortunately, the peace did not endure very long. We awoke the next day and resumed our normal activities. We took baths, played music in the kitchen while preparing breakfast, and arrived at our home office by 8 a.m. To begin our day, Kesha didn't leave the guest room until around 11:30. We heard her moving around in the kitchen and went out to see if she wanted to join us for lunch. We could tell just by looking at her that this was not the case. As we went into the room, she appeared tough and gave us a death stare. I asked her how she slept, and she sarcastically replied, "Like crap." My husband raged at her, telling her she couldn't talk to me like that. She lashed back, stating she could be in a better mood if I wasn't so loud in the mornings. Apparently, she heard me singing in the shower and claimed I woke her up. She asked if we could keep it quiet in the mornings from now on. We were stunned. I'd never had a guest speak to me like this before, especially a child. She then retreated to her room for several hours. We needed to get back to work, but we were both concerned about how the remainder of the day would unfold. Around 7 p.m., Kesha emerged from her room. I had saved her a plate for dinner, so we figured she would come out and eat. Instead, she threw a piece of paper down on the counter and began walking towards the front door. My husband asked where she was going, and she answered, "Out with friends." He warned her she couldn't go out alone right now, especially at night, with no idea where she was going or who she'd be with. I intervened and asked her what the piece of paper she had laid down was about. The list was handwritten. I grabbed it up and read it aloud. Kesha's house rules. No music or singing before noon. No disgusting food for dinner, also known as veggies. No boring television shows. Avoid asking foolish questions. Please do not enter my room. My husband laughed at the list, but Kesha's expression was dead serious. She truly expected us to obey her crazy regulations in our own home. I had had enough with this bullshit. I went to the door, grabbed my coat and keys, and instructed her to get into my car. She was perplexed, but my tone made it clear that I was not joking. She left for the car, and I assured my husband we'd be back in a minute. We traveled in quiet for around 15 minutes. I was furious, and I could tell she was too. After a while, Kesha realized she didn't know this part of town. She hesitated before asking where we were headed. I informed her that if she didn't want to stay with her parents or with us, I'd show her where she would end up. We were approaching downtown, and the look on Kesha's face told me she had never been to this section of town before. Every street corner was crowded with homeless people, all of whom appeared dirty and high. There were tents and trash everywhere. When we came to a stoplight, people approached the windows and began banging, asking for money. Some of them were outraged, and one man even kicked the car as we drove away. I could see Kesha was afraid, but neither of us said anything. Then I pulled into a parking area and turned off the car, ensuring the doors were locked. We had parked in front of a homeless shelter. People lined up outside the entrance, hoping to acquire a hot supper, blankets, or, if they were lucky, a roof over their heads for the night. Some of the guys were yelling and arguing with one another, but the majority of the women simply looked sorrowful. It was dreadful, and even I was afraid to be there. Finally, Kesha asked if we could leave. I informed her that if she wanted to come back to our house, she had to follow the rules. I also informed her that if she wanted to stay with us, she needed to call her mother and apologize, as her parents simply wanted the best for her. She nodded, and I knew I had communicated effectively. I don't believe anyone in her life had ever put her in her place like that. But, I believe, at that moment, a part of her knew it was precisely what she needed. When we came home, my spouse seemed anxious. Of course, he was intrigued about where I had taken her and what we had discussed, but I gave him a look that indicated I would tell him later. We all went into the kitchen, and I took out the plate of leftovers we had set aside for Kesha earlier. I heated it for her, and we sat down at the table together. My husband and I were startled that Kesha spoke out first. She inquired about what we both did for work. My husband was taken aback, but pleased to respond. After that, we talked about our careers, local colleges, and various extracurricular activities she may participate in. It was actually a wonderful evening. I may have been tough with her earlier, but I believe I got through to her. Now I only hope it sticks and she may return to her parents' place soon. Let's see what happens after she apologizes to her mother. The day after we visited the homeless shelter, Kesha called her mother. She asked if I would sit with her while they talked, and I of course agreed. She truly made an outstanding apology to her mother. By the end, she was in tears but smiling since her mother had accepted her apologies and invited her home. She startled me by asking if she could stay with us for a little longer. Her mother consented, so we decided she could stay with us until the following Monday, when she had to return to school. We may have had a bumpy start, but I believe this was the finest possible outcome. It's been a couple months since Kesha visited us. Since then, her conduct seemed to have changed completely. She has not received any further school suspensions, detentions, or calls to the office. Her grades have greatly improved, and she even auditioned and was accepted into her school dance squad. Her parents say she hasn't been hanging out with the same pals, and her attitude at home has significantly improved. Overall, I would say her stay at our house was a success for her. I'm extremely proud of her and excited to see what her future holds. God bless you. Thank you for identifying her as a child in need of instruction. You'd be an amazing mother. Great job, Auntie. I hope her parents are half as supportive as you are. My partner is upset with his parents about this, but some of his siblings and parents believe I was the jerk. So, here we are. I'm a 29-year-old female professional boxer who is probably in my final year or two of competitive competition. My guy, a 35-year-old man, is very supportive of my career and a true gem. We live on the opposite coast from his family, and he has had a strained relationship with his father for years, so I have never met them. His parents, on the other hand, have been working hard to make things right over the previous year. When he indicated that we will be in a nearby city for one of my matches, they wanted to have a family supper. I was genuinely pretty excited about it. I don't have a family, and his family is large, so I've always wondered what it was like. We tried to schedule dinner before the match because I always look a mess for a couple of days after a competition, but they had a conflict. So we scheduled it for a few days before flying abroad to give me some healing time. I wasn't seriously injured, but face bruises and cuts are impossible to hide. My partner had already informed his parents about what to expect, but I don't think they took it seriously. When we arrive, his mother is visibly uncomfortable, while his father simply stares at me. Some of his siblings and their families were present, and I was swamped by the nieces and nephews, who all had a million questions. That's where I could have made a mistake. I informed them about boxing and showed them a video of a portion of my battle on my phone to help them understand why I appeared to be injured. I told them that I was all right. It clearly impressed a couple of the nieces, as they spent the entire supper asking me questions and being amazed that girls could accomplish things like that. His father often attempted to redirect the conversation, which irritated him. He then remarked that it was excellent that I was thinking about retiring and starting a real life soon, indicating that I would have enough time to put together a household and have a family with my boyfriend. I told him that at most, I might become a trainer, and that I already had the life I want. His mother commented that it was a shame I was bruising up my nice face. I joked that this was my winner face, and that she should have seen the other woman. Except for the children and one of his sisters, the entire situation seemed strange and uncomfortable. When we arrived home, my boyfriend checked his texts and then called and raged at his parents. I later learned that his mother had told him that I was extremely improper and a negative influence on the children. One of his brothers inquired whether he was going to bring Barbarian Barbie back for Christmas because his children were so excited. However, his cool sister informed him that their daughter had already asked when Aunt OP will return. It's actually caused a big problem between my boyfriend and his parents, and I'm thinking if I should have simply kept the boxing stuff to myself. However, Barbarian Barbie sounds like a fantastic name to me. NTA. Your boyfriend warned the family, but he still decided to move the meal from before to after your disagreement. You have nothing to be ashamed about. I feel horrible for some of those kids though. Having such narrow-minded, oppressive parents and grandparents must be awful. You informed his parents about the natural repercussions of your career. They had plenty of time to discuss it with their children beforehand if they wanted to. Assuming you are correct and they did not take your warning seriously, they still had the option to explain it in a kid-friendly manner throughout the dinner. In the lack of explicit guidance from them, you acted in a natural and reasonable manner. You provided a short and comprehensive explanation of your apparent injuries, including video evidence of where they came from. I'll confess that I was startled and impressed by how you articulated your explanation. Then I realized that, like any other career, you'd undoubtedly had plenty of practice answering basic questions about it. So I'm no longer surprised, but I'm still really impressed. NTA. The amusing part is that the family is completely overreacting. While it's fantastic that girls can be boxers, most girls, and boys, don't want to be. This means that, like many other things that children are enthused about, their enthusiasm for this will decrease. I am a 40-year-old woman, and my cousin, a 36-year-old man, married his 35-year-old wife 5 years ago. During that time, she has been a welcome addition to our family. She's an academic who works as an assistant professor in a major metropolis in the neighboring state. Although she does not commute to university every day, she works from home the majority of the time. My husband, a 42-year-old man, and I paid them an unannounced visit a while back and were surprised to see how disorganized their home was. It wasn't too bad, although the floors should have been vacuumed and there were filthy dishes in the sink. My cousin's wife performs the majority of the cleaning, but since she started her new work, she has had less time for it because she is constantly grading or teaching. My cousin doesn't do much cleaning because his father is quite traditional about gender roles and did not raise him to help his wife clean the house. My cousin's wife has done an excellent job of teaching him to do more around the house, but it has been a lengthy process. When my cousin's wife celebrated her birthday recently, my sister, 45, and I decided to buy her a Roomba to help her keep the house tidy. My cousin had personally apologized to me during my previous visit for the house not being as clean as it should have been, so my sister and I decided that the Roomba would be good for her. Apparently it wasn't. She was angered by the idea that she was a lousy housekeeper and that cleaning was completely her burden, rather than asking our cousin to help her more often. What bothered me the most was that my cousin's wife gave the Roomba to Goodwill. If she didn't want the gift, she could have returned it to me, allowing my sister and I to receive our money back. I don't believe I'm T since she could use some aid. But now my cousin informs me that his wife is still furious and would not attend family events. The holidays are approaching, and if she does not appear, everyone will wonder where she is. My cousin is upset because he will be caught in the middle and obliged to explain her absence politely. Oh, YTA, big time. First and foremost, with seasonal changes, stressful work, and life in general, things must occasionally be put on hold in order to accommodate higher priorities. You paid an impromptu visit and were surprised to find her unprepared for visitors. I might understand anxiety if the house had mounds of items everywhere, making it impossible to move and posing a health risk, but dishes in the sink and unvacuumed, unswept floors are nothing. That's just a normal daily mess. Your cousin's wife also mentioned that she works from home. What do you believe this means? Do you suppose she's just sitting about twiddling her thumbs, waiting for something to do while getting paid? Second, you say your cousin's father taught him traditional gender norms, yet it appears that your parents did the same. Along with questioning why you're so critical, you should also consider what you've internalized and why you believe cleaning should be left to the woman in the home. This is a bizarre case of cognitive dissonance. Finally, I'm grateful she donated it. You deserve to lose money for perpetuating gender stereotypes and claiming that your cousin's wife isn't doing enough. You have no control over what someone does with anything you've gifted them. Honestly, I'm voting for YTA. You went to her house and complained about the degree of housekeeping to her spouse, whom you openly confess does nothing to help around the house, but not about her spouse. She works a tough job while still doing the majority of the housework that her spouse does not do enough of. Yet you believe it is appropriate to give her a vacuum cleaner as a birthday present because her spouse is too manly to help around the house adequately? Why not give it to him on his birthday, as he is the one who is lacking? Also, her husband is an AEH. Why the hell did he explain the present to her in that manner? It was rude. A spa gift card would have been a more appropriate gift for her. She works hard, but is unable to complete all of her responsibilities. Your relative refuses to help with the housekeeping because he believes that traditional gender norms are the norm. Perhaps you should have bought your relative a vacuum and cleaning supplies instead of his wife. It's really insulting to give her something on her birthday unless she has said to you that she wishes she had a Roomba. The gift was unsuitable. Now to the next story 7. My mother-in-law tried to ruin my marriage by stealing my phone, but her plan failed and her own daughter is suing her. She's absolutely insane. I, 34 female, and my hubby, 37 male, have been married for around 5 years. My mother-in-law was a headache to deal with long before we were engaged. She loathed me from the moment she met me. She has treated me horribly since the beginning, which is absolutely unnecessary. When my husband and I initially started dating, she would make so many comments about how we wouldn't last and how he'd ultimately become bored with me and go on. This continued after 3 years of being together. She refused to give up on the thought that we would soon break up. However, to her dismay, he proposed, and we became engaged. His father, sister, 35 female, and brother, 39 male, were all thrilled for us and have always been quite supportive. However, his mother was extremely salty and made no effort to hide it. She even expressed her disappointment in front of everyone, which was the most ludicrous thing imaginable. By then, I was used to it, so I didn't let it bother me. Thankfully, the rest of my husband's family is quite pleasant and has always made me feel welcome. My husband and his siblings are really close, and he adores them. My husband frequently stands up for them when their mother is too much to handle. My sister-in-law is married, and my mother-in-law also has a difficult relationship with her husband. While that is unfortunate, it is comforting to know that someone else understands what I am going through. My mother-in-law also made wedding planning extremely difficult. She was continually demanding that everything be done her way. She wanted to choose the venue, dress, cuisine, theme, and everything else, which made the situation extremely stressful. It reached to the point where I was considering canceling the wedding because it had become too much. But we made it through, and the wedding went off smoothly. My mother-in-law made a few disparaging remarks about my body, but my mother and sister-in-law yelled at her and escorted her out of the room. Aside from that minor hitch, our wedding went quite well. I hope that once my husband and I married, my mother-in-law would stop complaining about how we wouldn't last and we could start to get along. I was very, terribly wrong. She just couldn't get over the concept that one day my husband would wake up and realize I wasn't good enough for him, and we'd split. She would frequently make comments about how my husband should do better, that he should be with someone who could give him children. I'm infertile. She'd even try to suggest other women he could leave me for. For those who are concerned, my spouse defends me anytime she makes rude remarks. He shuts her down immediately, and if things get too nasty, we leave. He will not contact her until she has apologized to me. While her attitude does not change, my husband stands up for me. He has offered to cut off all communication with her if I wish, but I do not want to be the reason he no longer has a relationship with his mother. So I've always assured him it was okay and unnecessary. Besides, I was already used to her attitude, so it didn't bother me too much. We don't get to see my mother-in-law too much because of her conduct. We only go on exceptional occasions, like holidays or birthdays. I feel awful for my father-in-law, who is a wonderful guy, but we needed to set these boundaries because my mother-in-law is too much to bear. This applies to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law as well. They avoid seeing her as much as possible. However, when we do go, we are usually all together, and it is enjoyable to hang out with them. This past weekend, we all went over to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday. Everyone was present, which was wonderful, and we had a great time. My mother-in-law maintained her typical demeanor, but we did our best to ignore her and concentrate on the birthday man. We didn't want to give her any more attention than was required. We departed after the party, and everything appeared to be all right. Nothing noteworthy happened, or so we thought. Yesterday, I received a call from my brother-in-law, who informed us that my sister-in-law was planning to sue their mother. My husband and I were really perplexed, wondering why she would attempt to sue her own mother seemingly out of nowhere. He then revealed what happened on my father-in-law's birthday. My mother-in-law had stolen my sister-in-law's phone, believing it to be mine. She used it to message many random men for hookups, with the intention of showing my husband and convincing him that I was cheating on him, so he would leave me. However, my mother-in-law did not know she had taken the wrong phone. She had been impersonating my sister-in-law and sending improper messages to random males with her phone number and social media accounts. My sister-in-law discovered out when she went to her parents' house and requested her father to call her phone, believing she had left it there. When they heard it ringing in my mother-in-law's pocketbook, the truth was revealed. My mother-in-law admitted what she had done, and my sister-in-law lost her cool. According to my father-in-law, who subsequently informed my brother-in-law of what had occurred, my sister-in-law began yelling at my mother-in-law. She called her vulgar names and threatened to sue her for identity theft and slander. My mother-in-law is now losing her mind and upset at me because, somehow, I caused all of this. Despite the fact that she took the darn phone in the first place. She has sent numerous voice messages to my husband, referring to me as the Satan in their lives and alleging that it was because of me that she felt obliged to try such behavior. It's ludicrous, and my spouse is really furious with her. I absolutely doubt this is my fault, but what are your thoughts? You always have hilarious responses, and I appreciate everyone who contacted out. I'll have some tea in a few weeks, so get ready. My sister-in-law isn't backing down and plans to sue my mother-in-law. We attempted to persuade her not to attend, but she's adamant and over the wicked witch's antics. My mother-in-law tried to blame me for the entire affair, but my husband promptly shut her down. He has stopped communicating with her and has blocked her in everything. I have also blocked her. She even attempted to call me, but it didn't work. My sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and their partners have also stopped communicating with her. According to what my husband has heard from his father, my mother-in-law is in complete meltdown. She is absolutely perplexed as to how her own children could turn against her in this manner, and she continues to spew rubbish about betrayal and other follies. My sister-in-law is preparing to sue her for theft, slander, and identity theft. She has already engaged a lawyer, and they are in the process of scheduling a court hearing to handle the problem. It's been a stressful few weeks, and I'm proud of my sister-in-law for having the bravery to take her mother to court. My mother-in-law had anticipated this for a long time, so it is quite rewarding. My spouse also intimated that my father-in-law is getting bored of his wife's behavior. He apparently threatened to kick her out of the house again. I feel awful for him because he's such a kind guy, but I'm hopeful for his sake that things will calm down soon. That's all the knowledge I have for now. I'll keep you updated if anything else changes or if new developments occur. A month or two later, I decided it would be a good idea to update everyone who is interested in what is going on. My sister-in-law took my mother-in-law to court. They eventually reached an agreement, and my mother-in-law was required to pay a substantial sum to my sister-in-law for the harm she caused. My sister-in-law also obtained a restraining order against her mother, as she does not want to see her ever again. It's a sad scenario, but I can understand. Anyone would be tired of my mother-in-law's toxic behavior after so many years. My father-in-law has also chosen to file for divorce since he can no longer accept her behavior. When he served her with divorce papers, she lost it entirely. She ripped them up, and when he attempted to leave, she closed the door and forced him to stay. He had to phone the police, who arrived and removed her from the premises. The divorce was finalized almost a month ago. After my father-in-law kicked her out, she decided to see us. When I opened the door, she pushed her way inside, shouting at me. I swear my ears almost bled. I tried to get her to leave, but she refused and screamed at me. She shoved me, knocking me to the ground and hitting my head on our table. Thankfully, it was nothing serious, but I was concerned she would try anything worse. My husband arrived home just in time to force her out and call the cops on her. She was charged with assault for assaulting me, and we got a restraining order against her. All of my mother-in-law's children, including my husband, have stopped communicating with her and refused to have any kind of relationship with her, especially since she forced her way into our home and wounded me. Nobody knows what she's doing now, and I pray she never shows her face again. Things have been tranquil ever since she was forced to leave. We pay more visits to my father-in-law, and our family gets together more frequently, which has been beneficial. My sister-in-law is pregnant, which is very exciting. I can't wait to be an aunt. Honestly, my sister-in-law should sue her mother-in-law. She's so insane, she makes crazy eyes seem normal. Someone should probably get her a padded room at Grippy Sock Jail. I, a 19-year-old female, recently moved into a house that I inherited from my grandfather. I'm majoring in psychology, and my institution is close to the house, so it made sense for me to move in. It's more convenient in general. The house is reasonably spacious, with a great backyard encircled by a tall fence, and the most of the neighbors are kind. However, the woman who lives in the house directly to my right has caused problems. She is quite pious, as is her entire family, and they attend church every Sunday. Now, this is where the story begins. I've been working on lowering my carbon footprint, and because it was a beautiful, sunny, hot summer day, I decided to hang my clothes, including my underwear and bras, on the line in my garden. My neighbor observed and confronted me about it. She shouted something like, "Why are you hanging your dirty underwear out? You should be aware that it is disgusting and terrible. You should feel humiliated. My 6-year-old can see it. Take it down immediately." I answered by informing her that what I do in my backyard is none of her business, and that she should not have looked into my yard in the first place. Since then, whenever I see her, she throws me dirty and disgusting glances. She's also started gossiping about me to our other neighbors, which I know since I overheard her discussing it. The fence is quite tall, so she must have been attempting to see what I was doing in my backyard. Now that I think about it, perhaps I could have used a dryer instead. AITA to dry my underwear and things in the backyard? NTA for drying clothing, including underwear, outside. It has been a standard practice for generations. Many people continue to do it in warm weather. Your neighbor's 6-year-old probably doesn't care about your underwear. This is totally your neighbor's problem. While modesty is valued in some religious communities, your neighbor seems absolutely out of place here. Since the invention of laundry, people have hung their garments to dry. She cannot dictate what you do on your property. If you want to keep the peace and avoid dealing with her, hang a sheet or towels to obscure her view of your underpants. My sister is a mother of 4. Currently, she has Sloan, 14, female, Sheen, 13, male, Riley, 7, male, and Bria, 4, female. Sloan and Sheen share the same father, my sister's late husband Robbie. Robbie died 6 years ago, and my sister and her new husband Shane met 5 years ago. Shane already had Riley when he and my sister met, but Riley lacked a mother figure in his life, so my sister filled that role, and Riley now refers to her as mom. When my sister and Shane initially married, Sloan and Sheen told me that Riley was their mother's son, and that she and Shane referred to him as their brother. Sloan and Sheen, however, did not consider Riley to be their brother. They also admitted that Shane was occasionally referred to as their father, but they did not feel the same way about him. They urged me not to inform their mother because she would be upset and attempt to change their minds. I assured them they could speak with me if they needed to, and I hoped things would improve. They've told me over the years that they didn't sense a sibling link with Riley, and then with Bria when she was born. They also do not consider Shane to be their parent. Despite the fact that kids name him their stepfather, they see him differently than Robbie and my sister do. Sloan revealed the truth a few weeks ago when she created a scrapbook as instructed by her therapist. Sloan and Sheen have been visiting therapists on and off since their father's death. My sister read through the scrapbook and noted that Sloan had not included Riley, Bria, or Shane, but only Robbie, Sheen, and their extended family. She'd also shared details about her best pal. My sister asked Sloan and Sheen about it, and they told her how they felt. Later, she spoke with me. She claimed I didn't look astonished and asked why. I informed her that it had not surprised me. She replied, "You knew?" and questioned why I couldn't tell her. She claimed I was supposed to be her brother and had allowed her to continue believing everything was fine while her children built walls around their hearts. She also admitted that she should have done more to prioritize time spent with the older and younger children. I told her the kids didn't want her to know, and I didn't want them to feel unable to communicate with me. She claimed it wasn't an excuse and that I had failed as an uncle to all 4 of them by allowing this distance to build. AITA? NTA. The distance did not increase, it was always there. Your sister created the divide by attempting to fit the kids into her ideal of a perfect new family. She made them feel compelled to feel the way she wanted them to. You did the right thing by providing a safe environment for the children to confide in, and you should continue to do so. They'll need it. My wife and I married on the Saturday before Halloween and have recently returned from our honeymoon. However, we are still unable to agree on a problem that arose during the ceremony. We had always wanted a Halloween wedding but didn't want to marry on a Monday night for several reasons. If Halloween had fallen on a Saturday, we would have celebrated it. During the wedding, there was a discussion regarding holding the wedding on a real holiday. My mother stated that she would not have attended if it had been on Halloween. Everyone was taken aback and asked her for clarification. She stated, "People who get married on holidays are selfish, and I would never take trick-or-treating away from my sisters when you could have chosen any other day." She also stated that children only have roughly 12 to 14 Halloweens to trick-or-treat, and she would never take it away from them for anyone. My wife and her family were mortified. Honestly, I was not surprised. I knew she felt that way, and she had previously skipped her sister-in-law's wedding since it was on Halloween. My wife told my mother that she was being impolite and asked, "Who speaks that in front of the bride?" She accused my mother of favoritism and said that if our wedding was so unimportant, she simply leave. My mother said, "It isn't Halloween, so it's a non-issue." My wife, who was still unhappy, requested me in private to make my mother go, but I declined. My mother didn't seem to be demeaning her, she was only expressing her viewpoint. I wasn't going to kick my mother out of my wedding for a hypothetical situation. We didn't quarrel throughout our honeymoon, but my wife believes I should have made my mother go. NTA. Your mother was simply sharing her views. She even maintained it wasn't an issue because the wedding wasn't on Halloween. She wasn't playing favorites either. She had already missed her sister-in-law's wedding since it fell on Halloween. I understand her point of view. I wouldn't call individuals who have holiday weddings selfish, but I understand why she wants to preserve Halloween memories for her children. She wasn't trying to persuade you to change your mind about your date, she was simply expressing that she wouldn't have attended if it were Halloween. Your wife overreacted by asking you to kick your mother out of the wedding. That is severe. Your mother wasn't being disrespectful, she was simply being honest. Now to the next story 8. My parents begged me to forgive my brother for betraying me with my ex-wife and then demanded I support them and his new family financially. My wife, Amy, 26 female, cheated on me with my brother, Jake, 26 male. Thus I, a 34-year-old guy, just divorced. My family chose them over me, but karma had other intentions. To help you comprehend how my life culminated in this treachery, let me start at the beginning. Jake, born when I was 8 years old, was always the golden child, whilst I grew up as the forgotten one in suburban Boston. In the eyes of our parents, Robert, 58, and Sarah, 56, I appeared to vanish. They weren't outwardly hostile, but I was clearly viewed as an afterthought. This dynamic became evident as we grew older. I still recall winning my first science fair in 6th grade. I'd spent months developing a working model of solar system dynamics, complete with orbital calculations and revolving planets. I won first prize and received a special citation for mathematical precision. Jake, on the other hand, had a t-ball practice, not a game, therefore my parents were unable to attend the ceremony. Jake's participation ribbons covered the walls of our living room, while my prize sat untouched on the mantel for a week before being hidden in the basement. Our entire youth was influenced by this preference. Jake's C+ grades were applauded, whilst my straight A's were treated with distracted nods. My mother was concerned that Jake would feel guilty about his regular classes because I was in the advanced placement program. Jake got a new automobile for his 16th birthday to help build his confidence, according to his father, whereas I had to start working part-time at 16 to pay for college and buy my own clothes. Graduating high school was another difficult experience. During my valedictorian speech, my parents spent the whole of the ceremony filming 10-year-old Jake playing in the stands since he was bored. They didn't hear me announce my MIT scholarship. What was supposed to be a celebratory dinner for my successes transformed into a party for Jake because he seemed a little down about all of them. Mom even advised me to tone down my enthusiasm for my college aspirations. When I told her I'd been admitted to MIT on a partial scholarship, she said, "That's great, honey, but have you heard Jake might be the starting pitcher next season?" That's when I knew that nothing I accomplished would ever be adequate. I was simply the practice child, the test subject for their actual parenting efforts with Jake. At the age of 18, I headed out for MIT with my scholarship, money saved from 3 part-time jobs, and a resolution never to look back. When I moved into my dorm, Jake had a summer league game. My folks went early without even helping me unpack. College was a life-changing experience. For the first time, I was evaluated solely on my own merits. I realized my interest for software architecture, studied computer science, and graduated with honors. My college thesis on distributed systems optimization drew a lot of attention, and by the time I finished, I had 5 job offers. A part of me hoped that things would improve with my family, so I chose a good company in Boston, partly to stay close to home. Within 2 years, I was leading my own development team, and by the 5th year, I had become the youngest senior developer in the company's history. However, my parents were too consumed with assisting Jake with his 3rd college major change to comprehend or appreciate what I did for a living. 4 years ago, in a modest coffee shop near my employment, my life changed dramatically. That is where I met Amy. She was finishing her teaching degree while working as a barista. Amy had a talent for remembering each regular's order and a particular tidbit about them. She then told me that she had been leaving encouraging messages on my coffee mugs for weeks before I noticed. She eventually consented to go out with me. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We discussed everything, our families, anxieties, and dreams. When I told stories about my upbringing, she said, They're blind. They have no idea what they're missing. For the first time, I felt understood. The next year seemed like a dream. We prepared extravagant meals together, discovered Boston's hidden bookstores, and went hiking in New Hampshire. Amy encouraged me to pursue a large promotion at work, helped me prepare for interviews, and celebrated my victory more than anybody else. When I proposed to her after 14 months, she sobbed delighted tears and stated she had been waiting for it. At the time, I thought our wedding was little yet lovely. However, when my family came, they spent the whole reception discussing Jake's new job offer in California. My mother even stopped Amy's father's toast to share a text from Jake regarding his second interview. In retrospect, I should have seen it as a red flag, but Amy laughed it off, describing their commitment to Jake as sweet. For 3 years, our marriage was all I had dreamed for. We started talking about starting a family, acquired a lovely condo in Cambridge, and traveled whenever we could. Amy transformed our house into a warm, loving home by adorning it with images from our journeys and establishing a tiny container garden on our balcony. She frequently stated, "It's us against the world." Then, last year, Jake reconnected. After failing to flourish in California because the startup culture wasn't his vibe, he moved back to Boston. He wrote me a lengthy email, indicating his wish to restore our friendship. He remarked, "Family should stick together," and admitted that he missed having an elder brother in his life. After a week of consideration, Amy convinced me to give him a try. "People evolve," she added. "Maybe they've come to terms with their losses." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Jake for supper. Although the first meeting was unpleasant, it held potential. Jake appeared more self-aware, admitting that he had it easy growing up. He professed a wish to atone for the past. A week later, I introduced Jake to Amy, and they bonded right away. Too well, as I would eventually discover. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jake started popping by for dinner a few times a week. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, brought wine, and delighted us with tales of his adventures in California. He also stood up for me when our parents showed their typical partiality at Sunday dinners. I began to hope that we may finally form a genuine brotherly bond. However, things gradually began to alter. Jake began stopping by our house unannounced, often while I was still at work. Amy, who was frequently grading papers, told me they were simply hanging out and that it was wonderful to have company. He stayed for supper, used my coffee mug, and shared inside jokes with my wife. I ignored the warning signs. Their sudden stillness when I entered the room, Amy's phone turned away when I sat next to her, knowing glances at dinner, and coincidental meetups in the coffee shop or grocery store. The pregnancy was announced shortly thereafter. We were enjoying supper at home, naturally with Jake present, when Amy revealed the news. Although I was overjoyed, Jake's reaction should have shown everything. He was not astonished. Rather, he smiled with a knowing delight that made my stomach turn. Jake was never far away from me after that. He discussed how active he intended to be in our child's life, caressed Amy's stomach without asking, and made comments about the baby's future. Even when I planned a romantic baby moon for Amy and me, Jake ended up inviting himself. He stated, "The baby needs both of us," and Amy agreed. I still recall the night I learned the truth. I lay awake, mentally going over months of dubious happenings. Amy's phone was charging on the nightstand while she slept blissfully next to me. In our 6 years together, I had never looked at her phone. I believed in trust and privacy, but that night, I had to know. What I discovered devastated me. Jake and Amy have exchanged hundreds of messages over the previous 6 months. They discuss secret hotel meetings, future plans, and their baby. Soon after Jake re-entered my life, they began sharing a bed. They planned to notify me after the baby was born, figuring I would be too attached to leave. The pregnancy was not an accident, it was part of their strategy. Message by message, my world crumbled. I sat in the reading chair, holding Amy's phone, and read till daybreak. When Amy awoke and saw the phone in my hand, she knew. She wailed, "We did not intend for this to happen. Jake and I just clicked. He knows me better than you ever could." She even used the most overused phrase in the history of affairs. "We were going to inform you, but we didn't want to bother you after I became pregnant." That morning, I called my parents, expecting that they would finally support me. Their response stunned me. My mother responded, "Jake made a mistake, but he'll be a parent now. You have to forgive him and be the larger person. Think of the baby. Think about the grandchild." They were once again shielding Jake. Certain things never change. That day, I contacted a divorce attorney and went into a hotel. Amy alternated between screaming for my forgiveness and accusing me of deserting our family. At work, Jake tried to corner me, insisting on a man-to-man conversation. I reported him for workplace harassment and had security escort him out. Going through divorce was a nightmare. Amy and Jake claimed that their affair began due to my emotional unavailability, describing me as controlling and emotionally abusive. My parents supported their story, claiming that I had always been difficult and had a lifelong jealousy of Jake. My mother even criticized the mediator, claiming I should have been more sensitive to Jake's demands. Following that, I stopped negotiating. When we went to court, Amy was able to obtain a fair settlement. Apparently, in Massachusetts, having an affair with your husband's brother does not waive alimony. Small successes, such as retaining the condo and the majority of my salary, seemed hollow in comparison. I am currently 34 years old, divorced, and separated from my family. I changed my email address, blocked their phone numbers, and told building security to never let them in. Some days, I wonder whether I could have prevented everything if I had been a better wife, brother, or son. But, finally, I recognized that I was not the one who betrayed everyone. I was not the one who turned the family against itself. It is commonly stated that everyone ultimately suffers karma. I am not sure whether it is true, but I am weary of being the family's scapegoat. I'm tired of being supposed to be understanding, as others wreck their lives. I've spent my entire life as the one who was overlooked, the second best choice, the afterthought. No more. However, just when I thought things couldn't get much worse, they took another weird turn. Update 1. When I stopped communicating with my family following the divorce, I figured they would finally leave me alone. About a month had passed, and I was focused on recovering and going forward. But it appears that they had different ideas. Yesterday morning, while I was in an important meeting with my development team, our office receptionist notified me that my mother, Sarah, was in the lobby. She insisted on seeing me and allegedly spent over an hour telling anyone who would listen that she just needed to talk to her son. My crew, having watched Jake's previous workplace harassment episode, could tell I was concerned. I ignored her and went on with my work, but soon my phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. It turns out that my mother had asked various family members to contact me. I eventually answered one phone, assuming it was work-related. It was my Aunt Linda, 54, female, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Without saying a greeting, she began, "Your brother and Amy are really struggling. Jake still hasn't found work, and the settlement funds are running out." She added that Jake's affair with Amy became public knowledge and went throughout his professional network, so no one wanted to hire him. Background checks uncovered the issue, prompting several prospective employers to withdraw their offers. I couldn't help but note the irony. For once, Jake's actions had real consequences. This is where it gets absurd. In addition to buying groceries and paying rent, my parents have been financing Amy's pregnancy medical bills. My father's retirement assets are exhausted, and they are now in a panic as their money runs out. What is their solution? They want me to provide financial support to the woman who deceived me and the brother who destroyed my marriage. My mother did not simply show up at my office, she had a plan. Knowing I wouldn't return their calls, she decided to ambush me at work. After threatening to stay until closing time, she delivered a rehearsed speech about forgiveness and family responsibilities. When I finally went down to the lobby to deal with the problem, she conveniently forgot that I had paid for my own college education, stating, "Your father and I have always provided for both our sons. It's time for you to step up and support your brother during this difficult moment." What I was hearing was incredible. Was this a rough patch? My wife got pregnant after having an affair with my brother, who then tried to claim the child as his own. That wasn't a difficult stretch, it was a deliberate set of decisions. When I mentioned this to my mother, she responded, "Well, if you had paid more attention to Amy's needs." I interrupted her, told her to go, and proclaimed in the lobby that I was leaving my brother and his unborn kid behind. While many of my coworkers considered this circumstance humiliating, I wasn't bothered. That evening, Jake sent me an email with instructions on how to bypass my blocks. Using a new account, he issued half-hearted apologies and thinly veiled appeals for financial aid. He wrote about Amy's pregnancy difficulties, which I was unaware of, and claimed they couldn't afford adequate medical care. He also mentioned that the tension was hurting their unborn kid. The email included a sonogram photograph, which immediately piqued my interest. Their manipulative tactics were clear, as they used the baby's emotions to guilt me. The next day, my father arrived at my apartment building, claiming he merely wanted to talk. When the front desk called to alert me, I refused to let him in. For 2 hours, he stood in the lobby, telling anybody who would listen that his successful son was bringing his brother's family pain. Since then, I've had to notify building management of the problem and request that any family members not enter. While it is difficult to address intimate problems in public, I do not see any other option. The harassment has also spread on social media. Amy has been posting vague accusations on Facebook, claiming she was abandoned during her pregnancy by her emotionally unavailable husband. Jake has joined in, adding remarks about how some people need to step up and take responsibility. He's even reposted Amy's accusations, apparently oblivious to the irony of lecturing about responsibility while begging for handouts. It's upsetting how they twisted the story. They paint me as the evil guy because I refuse to support those who mislead me. They appear to assume I have a responsibility to help them from their mess just because I am successful professionally. I've started keeping track of everything, including emails, workplace issues, and social media posts. According to my lawyer, this documentation may be critical if they do anything legal. She is particularly concerned that they will try to use the legal system to get more support. What is the worst part? I've been getting messages from family, friends, and distant relatives telling me to put family first and be the bigger person. They don't seem to grasp that Jake and Amy destroyed what little family I had left. Even though I'm determined not to assist them, the constant pestering is wearing me down. To cope, I've been seeing a therapist and considered relocating to a different location for a fresh start. Despite my hatred for the concept of fleeing, I am fighting to find calm. My own family has gone to a depth I never imagined. They're not just appealing for aid. They're attempting to intimidate and pressure me into donating money to the people who destroyed my life. I have a gut feeling that this isn't over. Desperate people do desperate things, and they are becoming increasingly desperate by the day. Update 2. Suddenly, my former partner's counsel notified me that Jake and Amy were attempting to sue me for further assistance, citing increased medical needs and changed circumstances. My lawyer, who had meticulously documented their harassment, was outraged but prepared. Last week was the scheduled court date. Entering the courtroom felt strange. Amy was dressed to highlight her pregnancy, our parents sat right behind them with smug looks, and Jake wore our father's old suit. Their lawyer started with an outlandish narrative that nearly made me chuckle. They claimed that the emotional cost of the divorce had been undervalued, and that the initial settlement was inadequate. They claimed my pattern of workplace harassment had stopped Jake from obtaining work and even suggested that my alleged vindictive behavior was harming Amy's pregnancy, necessitating specialized treatment due to high-risk issues. My attorney's reaction was heartbreaking. She began by showing surveillance tape from my office building that captured my mother's theatrical antics, Jake's violent behavior, and Amy's attempts to sneak in through the back door. She then presented social media evidence, specifically a full timeline of their internet abuse campaign. The genuine revelation came from their bank documents. Jake had turned down several employment offers, dismissing them as beneath him, demonstrating that he was not struggling as a result of my actions. Amy had declined a full-time teaching position to protect her jobless pregnant woman status. The most incriminating evidence was Amy's prenatal records, which proved she was having a perfectly healthy pregnancy with routine expenses. They had used their unborn child as a pawn to acquire sympathy and money. The judge was genuinely angry. When their lawyer attempted to argue that their mental distress required extra assistance, the judge stopped, saying, "Your clients appear to have committed perjury, counselor. Do you really want to follow this line of reasoning?" Following a brief break, their lawyer returned with a gloomy demeanor. Jake was pale, Amy was crying, and their united front had utterly collapsed. I was pleasantly surprised by the judge's ruling. In addition to denying their motion, the judge decreased my alimony payments by 60%. "Parties who misuse the legal system are not viewed favorably by this court," stated Mr. Justice. Mr. Smith appears to have fallen victim to a well-planned operation to exploit him financially and emotionally. The fallout was fast. Amy decided she could go back to work, while Jake suddenly obtained a retail job. In their final message, my parents blamed me for sabotaging Jake's last chance and promised me that they would never forgive me for abandoning my family. Their attorney quit from representing them, citing irreconcilable differences in truthfulness. My workplace tightened security and prevented them from entering the premises. I later found that my parents had taken out a second mortgage to cover their legal fees, and Jake and Amy were regularly battling about money, according to mutual friends. I finally feel like I can breathe. With decreased expenses, I'm building up my money and exploring a job offer in Seattle. Allowing people to confront the consequences of their conduct is typically the most effective form of retaliation. However, I can't remove the sensation that this story isn't finished. Update 3. I'd want to start by thanking the community. Your support and insights have helped me stay strong throughout this ordeal. This may be the final update to my story. Aunt Linda, my father's sister, unexpectedly contacted me many weeks after the court decision. I was interested in hearing her perspective because she had never been involved in a family conflict. This turned out to be a mistake. Trying to seem worried, she started, "Your father isn't getting any younger. His health is suffering as a result of all this stress." She went on to explain how my parents were on the verge of losing their retirement money and had refinanced their property to cover Jake and Amy's bills. "Families should stick together no matter what," she told me. When I didn't respond with sympathy, she swiftly shifted tactics. "Did you know that your mother sobs herself to sleep each night? Even if they behaved poorly when you were a youngster, they are your parents. Jake is still your brother, despite everything that has transpired." Finally, I cut her off. "What specifically are you referring to? Jake spent months sleeping with my wife. Getting her pregnant and then claiming the child for his own? Is that what you meant?" Her reaction astonished me. "Well, perhaps you could have been more involved in your marriage," she stated. She went on to blame their affair on me, stating that my alleged childhood jealousy of Jake produced a toxic environment that drove them together. It was so absurd that I laughed, really laughed. Yet another family member was attempting to coerce me into accepting responsibility for Jake and Amy's actions. This time, however, it did not work. I was not moved at all. "Linda," I inquired, "why don't you help them if you are so concerned about their finances? Your husband's legal firm is prospering, and you have 3 rental homes. Why am I the only one required to support them?" She sputtered, unable to respond properly, and stated, "That's different. You have a special obligation as Jake's brother." When I questioned Linda why she hadn't intervened earlier but was now selecting sides, I replied, "You decided to come to me and demand that I pay for their consequences rather than admit the harm they caused." She then delivered what she thought was her trump card. "Your father is considering early retirement due to stress. The home may need to be sold. Is it your desire to see your loved ones lose everything because you are too proud to help?" I responded, "No, Linda. They are losing everything as a result of their decision to support Jake's conduct. Once again, they, like Jake and Amy, are paying the price for their own actions. And, guess what? I am not responsible for resolving that. When you're older and alone, family is all we have in the end," she said, threatening to make me regret my decision. "No," I responded. "Self-respect is all we have in the end, and I'm finally choosing to keep mine." With that, I hung up and blocked her number. However, the talk provided an unexpected benefit. Clarity. For the first time, I felt completely liberated from the obligations and guilt that had haunted me since infancy. Later that day, I accepted a job offer in Seattle. The relocation feels like the appropriate decision, and the company is offering me a significant boost. I am starting again and selling the condominium. My coworkers organized a farewell celebration for me yesterday. During the most difficult months of my life, these people demonstrated what genuine support looks like. My close colleague sent me a card signed by everyone with the following message: "Your value is not defined by those who cannot see it. I've understood that family is based on mutual support, respect, and trust, not blood. Friends who stood by me, coworkers who protected me, and eventually myself, have become my genuine family. I am done. To my parents, Jake, Amy, and now Linda, your choices led you to this point, and you are accountable for the consequences. I am no longer available as your ATM or scapegoat. As for me, I'm looking forward to my new life in Seattle. I'm excited about the potential available at my company's renowned West Coast location. More importantly, I can't wait to live a life in which I am valued for who I am rather than compared to someone else's golden child." Writing this final piece from an empty condo, surrounded by stacked boxes, seems weirdly appropriate. Tomorrow, I'll start my drive west. I will reflect on my old life, with all of its misery and familiar turmoil, but I will continue to go forward. Yes, their baby was born last week, in case you were wondering. No, I have not contacted anyone or seen any photos. That chapter of my life is over. I'd like to thank this community again for their support during this trip. Your encouragement and suggestions helped me overcome my self-doubt. For anyone in a similar circumstance, keep in mind that your worth is more than how your family treats you. Walking away may be the most self-loving thing you do. It is time to go. Here's to new beginnings. Now to the next story. 9. I found my husband and sister having an affair in the kitchen I paid to renovate, with her making excuses like our mother once did for her actions. I can't move. If I move, it becomes real and I have to accept what I saw and think of what's next. I came home from work early and saw my sister's car, thinking maybe she was dropping off some food from her job. But no, I walk in and see my husband and sister naked in my kitchen. The kitchen I paid for. As soon as I registered what I saw, I got into my car and left. I kept driving, just driving until I found the hotel I'm at now. I don't want to believe it. I don't know what to do. My sister, my only family, and my best friend. The one who's supposed to be there for me and support me. My husband, my person, my other half, the one who's supposed to love and respect me. The two most important people in my life have ruined everything. I've blocked them both on my phone. I don't want to hear any of the bullshit excuses they'll come up with. I don't want to confront this. I want to go back to this morning when everything was fine. Comments. Comment 1. Unblock them and just let their calls go to voicemail. Turn the ringer off for each of them in your contacts. That way you can get recorded proof of their apologies and excuses via voicemail. You may need that type of proof for your divorce. Comment 2. Just from a banking standpoint, I work at a bank. File legal documents intending to separate, open an individual bank account, start your paychecks going there after you've filed your separation papers. I don't know what state you are in, whether it's a community property state or not, but keep everything as clear-cut as possible so there won't be issues down the road. Deal with them with your head held as high as possible, don't take their shit, and cry when no one is watching. In front of them, be the badass that you are. They are the lowest of the low and they will prey on your perceived weaknesses. Best of luck. Edit. I am not a lawyer and I cannot give legal advice. Comment 3, je suis si désolé OP, je ne peux pas imaginer la douleur et la colère que vous devez ressentir Reine, j'espère que vous avez un moyen de sortir de ce mariage en toute sécurité, fuyez et ne regardez pas en arrière. Fuck 'em, fuck both of them. Comment 4, the my only family part is what hit me hard. I'm so sorry OP. Yeah, we cut contact with our abusive parents 7 years ago. Thought we were supposed to have each other's backs, always update, 3 days later. Sorry for not replying to comments and not updating, things have been hectic. I didn't think I needed to explicitly say this, but by naked I meant they were butt naked and fucking in the kitchen. I admit mentioning that I paid for the kitchen was odd, and kinda funny. But anyone that knows me knows that the kitchen is my pride and joy, so yes, when I saw my sister and husband fucking in my kitchen it stuck with me. And yes, they did see me. When I got to the hotel I cried for a few hours and then I just wanted to tell someone, anyone. The two people I would talk to when something happened in my life were the two I needed to talk about, and it was 11-something in the evening, so I wasn't going to disrupt my friends' evenings and burden them. So instead I came to Reddit thinking not many would see it. The response I received was overwhelming. I want to say thank you to everyone that sent me kind words and advice. Thank you so much for all the virtual hugs. I know I only commented once, it's because I had so much to think about and do. I appreciate all the love and support. There was so much amazing advice given in the comments, although a lot of it was American-based I still appreciate it. But one thing I did see a lot was to unblock them and keep the texts and calls as evidence, so I did do that. After posting and another good cry I knew that I had to get my shit together. I didn't have my sister or any family to help, so I had to do it myself. I started researching what my next steps were. In the morning, my friend called me saying my sister contacted her wondering if I had been in contact with her. I told her what happened and she very kindly offered her spare room and her day off work to help me sort stuff out. I called in sick at my job and my friend helped get things done. I got in contact with my friend who works at a bank and she helped me start sorting my finances. My friend also found me a lawyer to consult with. After my phone consultation with the lawyer, I was so overwhelmed. I now know why so many women don't divorce their cheating husbands. It's such a lengthy, expensive, and emotionally draining process. I, fortunately, make a stable income and can support myself, and we, fortunately, don't have kids. I have to remember that things aren't going to happen in one day. It will all take time. As for the house, unfortunately, his parents did buy it for us, and to be honest, after what I saw, I don't want it. I will try to get reimbursed for my beloved kitchen, otherwise, it can burn for all I care. This has been super draining, but I knew I had to talk to them. I already knew there was no coming back for my husband, and when I checked his messages they were exactly what I thought they would say. I'm sorry. It's not what it looks like. We didn't mean for it to happen. Please come home. I love you. Blah, blah, blah. Just absolute bullshit. A small part of me thought maybe I could find it in me to forgive my sister as we only have each other. But after I opened her messages all hope was lost. She used the same excuses we heard our father use when he cheated on our mother and beat us. She said the same things our mother would say when she would excuse our dad's behavior and also beat us. I spoke to her this morning and asked her to tell me straight up who, what, where, when, and why. She told me back in July when I went on a girls' trip she was at our house and joked to my husband that I would cheat on him on the girls' trip because that's what always happens. He said nah, and they joked about it, but she said he could get even with me and they ended up doing it once. One time led to 2 to 3, then to whenever they could do it. There was never any evidence or signs or anything that I was going to or even thinking of cheating. I told her we were done and there is nothing she could do to bring us back together. I later received a call from an unknown number. It was my mother, who I haven't spoken to in 7 years. Turns out my sister has been in contact with her and told her what had happened, and my POS mother, the same woman who beat me for breathing wrong, had the audacity to say this is what I get for taking her daughters away from her. It hurts so much. I know things are going to get messier and this is going to be a long few years. I've now lost all my blood relations. I need to get all my shit and find a new place. I want to show them that I can and I will thrive without them. Again, thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all the love and advice. All the people in the comments that could relate to me, I'm so sorry. Comments. Comment 1. I'm very proud of you for taking charge and standing up for yourself. I know it's very hard, but you got this. You will get through this. Thank you for your kind words. It's pretty hard losing the only family I had, but I'm trying so hard to stay optimistic. Betrayal like this is fucking devastating. It will be long and hard and draining, but I will make it. Comment 2. Foutrele. Family is more than blood. You happen to have some amazing friends, keep them. You can do it and you will make it through this. Comment 3. Hold your head high and cut all of them out of your life. Do his parents actually own the house or did they just give money? Cut off mother and sister for good. Your sister had a piece of work. They gave my ex-husband the money for the house. So it's under his name. And yes, my sister can join my mother and do whatever. They're no longer related to me. Comment 4. Out of curiosity, have you asked his parents if they knew what was going on? This will give them the opportunity to hear what actually happened rather than the lies he'll tell to cover his bad behavior. As soon as I started receiving messages from his mother, I knew he had been feeding them a false narrative. She's been calling me names for bringing my cheating backside and my slutty sister into his life. She never liked me because of my background and thought I should forgive my mother. Unfortunately, all I'll hear from them is the bullshit he's told them. Update 2. 10 months later. I actually forgot about this account until recently, and when I logged back in I saw so many people still commenting, messaging me and checking up on me. To those people, thank you for your kindness. Since so many still ask for an update and I've already shared such a big part of my life, I may as well give a small update. Back in October, my life was in chaos, but I was determined to soldier through it and show them that I can make it without them and succeed. I had to meet with my ex to talk about the house and he kinda gave up and we decided to sell the house. I was reimbursed for my beloved kitchen. At first, my sister would show up at my job and my friend's house, but once I told her that I would get the police involved, she stopped. I haven't seen her since February. I did hear from my pathetic excuse of a mother again, but that was also shut down and I have not heard from her since the end of last year. I'm from New Zealand, so my ex and I have to be living separately for 2 years before we can divorce. Although I want nothing to do with him, I'm not too fussed. 1 year is almost done. I started therapy, which has been healing. I wish I had gone earlier. I have moved into my apartment and I was promoted at work. I have also gone on 2 girl trips and had some extra fun these times as I was a single woman. And I've also just started seeing someone. He has been very kind. Thank you all again for your kindness. Hope this is the update you were waiting for. Comments. Comment 1. I'm glad you updated. You're happier. Never introduced the man to the family. Wouldn't put it past your sister to repeat her behavior. Cutting the toxic people in your life brings so much mental freedom. Living a happy single life after divorce is a kindness to yourself. Best update so far. Comment 2. From what it sounds like, she's gone no contact with all of her family, sister included, the former because of the abuse and the latter because of the reason for this post. Now to the next story. 10. My ex-wife and her wife want my son to call her mom and adopt him to move to Spain. I firmly oppose, protecting my rights as his father. Hi all. Throw away because my friends are not completely aware of this current situation. I, 35 million, was married to my ex-wife, 34F, for 7 years. 2 years ago my ex-wife came out as lesbian. This came as a complete shock to me. She and her partner were co-workers who had an affair since she joined the company a year before our divorce. We have a son together, 8 million. This came as a complete shock to me. I was heartbroken and devastated. I felt betrayed as I had spent 7 years of my life with this woman and it all felt like a lie now. When I confronted her, she told me that she had to live her truth, and that she tried to suppress her identity because she didn't come to terms with it till she met her partner. When I asked whether she loved me, she told me that while she loves me, it's different than how she loved her new partner. This broke my heart even further. The divorce was quick as she did not want anything from me and we agreed to a 50-50 split of custody. But I decided to go no contact with her and handled the custody transfer process through my sister, 27F, whom I moved in with after the divorce. I sold the house and we mutually agreed that the excess money from the sale will be in a college fund for our son in the future. I could not bear to stay in that house anymore as it kept reminding me of her betrayal. For context, she introduced her partner as her work friend, and I believed her. I had no reason to suspect anything and they had several girls' nights, but I figured that they were probably using these as cover for the affair. For 6 months I was in a depressive state because I didn't know where I went wrong. But this is one of those scenarios that anything I would have done wouldn't have been able to make it better. This made me even more depressed, and the fact that all the vows and little things that she said at our wedding were all just lies trying to keep up a ruse made it even worse. The two people that got me through this state was my sister, whom I am eternally grateful for helping with her nephew and helping me while maintaining her career. The other person that got me through this was my college ex-girlfriend. Around 4 months after the divorce we reconnected at a reunion and she really helped through the worst of it as a friend. Around a year after the divorce, we started officially dating, and I introduced her to my son. During all this time my ex's partner had been having limited interactions with my son. This was not because of me saying anything, but my ex-wife wanted him to adjust to his new reality. My son is in that weird age where he understands what's going on, but he doesn't really understand what's actually going on. If you know, you know. He understands that mommy has a girlfriend and that me and his mom are not together anymore. I'm pretty happy considering we didn't really talk to him about the LGBTQ+ stuff because we had decided that we can talk about this when he's a bit older, but I'm happy that he's come to terms with the divorce. Around 8 months ago, my ex said that she was officially moving in with her partner and that she was engaged. At this point I still was in no contact except brief conversations that concerned our son. She invited me to the wedding but I declined. They were planning to have a destination wedding in Spain where her girlfriend lives. She wanted to take our son to the wedding and he would have to miss school for a week since she wanted him to meet her girlfriend's family as well. I told her that missing school for a week does not make sense and that she should plan her wedding when he has vacation since she doesn't have a fixed date yet. She argued that most likely they won't have a date that will align with his vacations and that they are getting married as soon as possible. I relented and agreed since I didn't want to interact with her anymore and it was well within her rights to have her son at her wedding. The problems started when my son came back after the wedding. He was supposed to stay with me since we have a flexible week in week out custody arrangement. She wanted to take my son on her honeymoon so that he has a chance to bond with his new stepmother. I told her that she had already had 2 weeks with him since she had custody for a week before the wedding and that I wanted to spend some father-son time with him. I told her that it is well within my rights and that she should go spend some time with her new wife. She argued that since our son's interactions with her partner were limited because of her busy schedule, that this was a great opportunity for them to bond. I told her that she had 2 weeks for him to get to know her partner. She said that they were busy with the wedding and did not have time. I told her that I had taken vacation days for us to go to a motorcycle expo and build a Lego set, 2 things that my son absolutely loves. She kept arguing and I finally told her that the custody was placed for a reason and that's the one thing I will not negotiate on. She got angry at me and left. Me and my son had a great experience. I even got him one of those kid-sized motorcycles since he liked them so much. Over the next few weeks we returned back to our week-in week-out routine. One day I find that my ex posted a photo shoot of them and my son under a caption of #lesbianmommies. I thought that it was a post and it probably meant nothing, but it was showing them as a family and something about that did not sit right with me. When I got my son for the week I asked him if his mom was saying anything to him. He relented a bit but told me that his mother had been trying to convince him to call her partner his mom. This was a shock to me as I never expected my ex to do this. Then again, I've been wrong about these things before. I asked him if that's something he wanted and he told me that he is much more comfortable calling her by her first name and that he feels weird with calling 2 people mom. I told him it's okay and that he shouldn't feel pressured to do anything. I called my ex and asked her to meet up because this was serious and I wanted to discuss this. I confronted her about this and she told me that since her and her partner were married, it's only natural for our son to have 2 moms now. I told her that it's not okay for her to try and convince him into calling her partner his mom because she is not his mother. She doesn't have an active parenting role in his life and that any major parenting decisions require the 2 of us. She tried making an argument that since me and my girlfriend were becoming serious now and that eventually I might want him to start calling her mom. I told her even if we become serious I won't try and convince our son to start calling her mom, because he already has 2 parents and he doesn't need more. Then she dropped the bombshell on me. She told me that she and her partner were hoping that eventually down the line they can file for adoption. I'll still be able to visit and see my son, but she wanted her and her wife to have legal guardianship because they wanted to build a new family with them. I told her absolutely not and that our partners have no say in our kids' lives. She accused me of being homophobic for denying her the right to a complete family, and I told her while her life is her choice, our son's life has to be a thing that we decide ourselves. I ended the conversation there and told my son to tell me if her mother tries to force him to do anything that he doesn't want to do. 3 weeks later I found out that my ex had enrolled him in Spanish lessons that he told me that he hated doing. For context, my ex is Latin and her partner is Spanish, so they are more comfortable talking to each other in Spanish. We made the decision to raise our son in English because it made sense at the time, as she speaks English better than Spanish and I don't speak any Spanish. When I discussed this, she told me that she would like her son to connect more to his heritage. I said that I don't have any problem with that, but we have tried this several times before when we were married and he had shown zero interest in it. She told me that this time might be different since he will have 2 Spanish speakers at home. I told her that I am in favor of bilingualism because 2 languages are always an advantage, especially for kids, but if he doesn't want to do it, there is no reason to force him to do it. Maybe try another language? She then accuses me of denying our son his roots and goes on a tirade of accusing me of denying our son his identity and coming back to me denying her right to a family. My girlfriend usually stays out of these matters, but she advised me to contact my lawyer and see what they can actually do. My lawyer told me that even if they send an adoption notice, I can contest it and it would take something exceptional like abandonment, etc., for my contest to get rejected. My ex keeps posting our son as a part of her new family and it's honestly started to trigger me. 2 weeks ago I interacted for the first time with my ex's new wife after the divorce. She contacted me and asked to meet up. She told me that my ex had finally started to recover from the social trauma of coming out and building a new life with her and that I am now getting in the way of happiness. She accused me of being emotionless and uncaring through our divorce and how I guilt-tripped her into agreeing to my demands of 50-50 custody, and how I should just agree to the eventual adoption in a few years because she has always wanted a son and that I will still remain my son's dad and I can still visit him. I told her that I don't care what her emotional state was during the divorce and that my demands were fair even to the most irrational person. I told her that if they want to create this image of a perfect family, then they should have another kid that has no connection to me. I feel like all this has started to affect my son more than anything. He is a lot less happier than he was just a few months ago as we had started to adjust to this new reality. For context, since I know this is going to come up eventually, the emotional trauma of my ex coming out is basically the fact that her family effectively disowned her after coming out. Her parents don't talk to her anymore, while my son has plenty of interactions with his maternal grandparents when he's with me. Those 2 combined make significantly more money than I do alone. However, my ex-wife makes less money than me, but her partner is in a senior position, so she has more stability. This is also an argument my ex-wife used when we discussed adoption, since they can then send our son to a private school and generally give him a better life. I don't know if this is a factor, but the recent elections may have caused this because they are worried that they might not be able to adopt soon, but they don't want to adopt my son now but in a few years, so I doubt this to be true. Edit. I posted an update now. Update. Hi all. It seems that my draft went missing somehow and I'm sorry for posting a couple of empty blocks. Original post is here. It's been crazy seeing everyone's reactions to the situation and I wanted to share a quick update with you all. First of all, I'd like to clarify that my son and I have been going to therapy since the divorce. He was doing quite well until the whole mom saga happened. My in-laws disowned her after she came out. They were not even aware about the affair when she came out to them. They still spend time with my grandson under the condition that they don't badmouth my ex and don't preach their views to him. They agreed and said that they valued a relationship with their grandson over any political view they might hold. I have been a part of every interaction that they have had with him because I was worried they might say something. Thankfully, this has not been the case. Her extended family has said to me that they have all cut her off as well, some for the affair and some for her being gay. Our mutual friends also cut her off because of the affair. All our mutual friends were my work buddies and their spouses, partners. I did not ask them to do anything. They came to the decision on their own. I was actually glad when she told me that she had made a friend on her own, as she used to complain about not liking her colleagues. We all know how that turned out. I'm pretty sure they're not planning to skip the country. I have all my son's documents and we decided it during the divorce because she was still figuring out where to go, and since I was moving in with my sister, the chances of them getting misplaced were low. I have also had no demands for any documents and she returned the passport to me when we came back. The whole adoption thing probably stems from the fact that my son has a very close relationship with his mother. The only times he has really complained to me is when she asked him to call her partner mom, and that she was making him do Spanish classes that he did not want. We did everything for him equally during our marriage, but I had to travel out of state to my parents frequently during COVID, because they were sick with pre-existing conditions and couldn't take care of themselves. My sister was on an assignment abroad at that time. My sister also agreed with this. Please let me know your thoughts. I listened to people and contacted my lawyer, who is also my friend, today morning. He told me the same thing as last time and that it would take something really unusual for the adoption process to go through like child abandonment. He also said that they a bunch of idiots that have no idea how the law worked. He also told me that if the whole, "we want to adopt him," is a real thing and if she is talking shit about me to my son and I could prove it, I could get custody. This has not been the case as I've not heard my son say that his mom says bad things about me. This brought me a sigh of relief. I plan to contact my ex today with the following conditions. We both install parenting apps and document all interactions. No more mention to me or my son regarding adoption or calling her partner mom. No more posting images of my son as a part of their perfect queer family, because frankly, I don't want my son photos on the internet when he is so young and he can decide what he wants when he is older. I plan to talk to my ex in a couple of hours. Please let me know what you think about this. Final update. Hi all, so I talked to my ex today. She was busy yesterday and I wanted some more time to gather my thoughts. When we met, I put forth my demands. She told me that the parenting app idea seems fine and that she has no problem with it. She got sad when I told her to drop the idea of adoption and call her partner mom, as it's just not gonna happen. She told me that her family was pressuring her to settle down. I proposed after a year of dating and I did not know this, and getting pregnant so soon after getting married was not what she had in mind. She got pregnant 1.5 years after getting married. Is that soon, IDK? She told me that she was in the closet all her life because of her parents and that she thought marrying me would cause her feelings to subside and that she was happy until she met her partner. She did go through postpartum depression after giving birth, but I did not know that she didn't want to get pregnant so soon. She then told me, her wife and her, that the reason they wanted to adopt my son was because she wanted to start new. She then said that she was never really happy during our marriage and that with her new wife she could have the family she always dreamt of having. She didn't want my son to grow up to resent her for being a lesbian as he doesn't have any exposure to people like her apart from her and her partner. Look, I have to be honest here, I don't know any gay people nor anyone in my friends or family is gay. We never talked about these things because it simply doesn't come up in our daily life, but that doesn't mean me and my son have no idea who they are, especially after the divorce. I told her that this is not going to happen and that he has had a lot of exposure to people from her community. I told her that seems like a bullshit reason for separating my son and me and that she is making up some random reason to make her seem like it is. After some arguing she told me the real reason why she and her partner want to adopt my son. Reddit is crazy for their prediction abilities, like honestly, wow. Apparently they wanted to adopt my son because her wife and her are considering moving to Spain in few years. I told her that she can't do that and that the legal framework supports me and my rights in both countries. She told me she knew this and that's why they wanted to get me to sign adoption. I told her that she was crazy, that she in no way is able to do this as she still need my permission to take him out of the country as when she did when they got married in Spain. I also read a comment yesterday on the update and researched a bit on the laws regarding this, so I know this is not happening. She told me again that they have done their research and that this was to see if I would agree. In case I agreed they would consider moving and in case I didn't because she doesn't want to be separated from my son. I again emphasized that this is not going to happen and that if she tries anything or says anything to my son, I will sue for full custody. She got sad again and told me that they wanted to check with me first. I told her, in what world would you expect me to give you and your wife full custody? First you divorce me, leave me a woman and then expect me to sign over my child and act like nothing happened. I told her from this point on we will document everything, every interaction we have, and that if I even get a whiff of you trying to pull something I will sue for full custody. She got a bit scared at the idea of losing full custody. She didn't really consider me doing that and she agreed. I then told her not to paint this picture of a picture-perfect queer family that they are trying to do because that is not going to happen. Our son has a mom and a dad that he spends half his time each with, not two moms. He is not your affair partner's son. He is your son and mine. If you want a child with her you can do so on your own. I then told her that the courts are more likely to side with me than you in this case because of the thing you have been trying to do and the fact that I work from home and spend more actual time with him than you and your wife. I have been trying for him to have a stable relationship with both parents since the divorce because I don't want him to reset either of us, but if you try to remove me from his life, I will sue for full custody and deal with any resentment he has for either of us. I didn't want to argue anymore and I left the room. I secretly recorded the conversation because I wanted to have proof in case anything happens in the future. Honestly, Reddit, I have been very angry at my ex since the divorce. I have not shown it around her and my son because I don't want her to use this against me in any way and have been going to therapy, but I am still internally angry. The comments she made today about our marriage really hurt me even more. I have spent 7 years with this woman and her betrayal still makes me angry to this day. When I got home, I contacted my lawyer friend and he again reiterated that they would have to kidnap him. I asked him if there was anything else we could do and he said that the current agreement is very thorough. We have made sure of that. If I want full custody or not is up to me, but I have to be sure that I want to put me or my son through the whole process. I don't want my son to grow up without either of his parents, as that is just not healthy for him. That is why I won't sue for full custody now. If they are stupid enough to kidnap him, I'm sure they are not. Then the law sides with me anyway. I know what position her partner is at their workplace, so I know they are making good money to leave it all behind for no good reason. As for the passport thing, I have all his documents and all things such as notifying travel, hospital visits, and others are already in the signed custody agreement. We already have a legal framework for all this. I am not going to sue for full custody now because I don't want that for my son. My ex-wife is still a good mother and loves him and he enjoys spending time with her, plus my son is the type of person to openly voice out what he does not find okay to me, so I will know if they continue any of their nonsense. On a more positive note, y'all, I'm not against Spanish lessons, but he doesn't like them. I was just suggesting that he try some language he likes. There are other languages out there. I didn't say it to my ex then, but now I know that she was trying for him to learn Spanish because of the Spain thing. Thank you to everyone for their support, it really helped me with understanding the problem. Holy shit though, I didn't even consider her considering moving to Spain until I read the comments. Y'all are great at this. Now to the next story. 11. I called an ambulance when my coworker fell and hit her head drunk at a work event. She got fired, and now some colleagues blame me. This got removed from AITA, so posting here. I, 27F, was at a group work training for my job this past weekend. The company put a bunch of us up in a hotel and had us attend a day-long presentation about our goals for the next quarter. For context, we're in sales, it's highly competitive, and the group consisted of mostly older employees with me being the youngest. After a full day of meetings, a few of us decided to get dinner at a restaurant down the street from our hotel. We carpooled, and when we arrived, one of the older ladies, Deborah, 50s, was already there, standing at the bar. We invited her to join us for food, but she declined, and we moved on with our night. I had 2 beers with dinner, so I'm not judging, but as we finished our meal, it became clear that Deborah was plastered. She was stumbling even though the ground was level and slurring pretty badly. As we left, Deborah came outside with us and reached for her keys. I immediately stopped her and said I'd drive her back to our hotel. She agreed, but as she went to grab the passenger door handle, she missed and fell straight back onto the pavement, hitting the back of her head. I don't mean to be gross, but it sounded like someone dropped a carton of eggs. I checked, and not only was she passed out, but she was bleeding from her head. Everyone panicked, and I grabbed my phone to call 911. One of the younger guys stopped me and said, "Help me get her in the car. We'll get her room key out of her purse and just put her in bed." I was bewildered and said, "But she has a head injury. She's bleeding? What if she cracked her skull? I'm no doctor, but if you go to sleep with a head injury, don't you not wake up?" I'm pretty sure I learned that in school, and some of the other employees agreed with me, so I called the ambulance. Paramedics took Deborah to the hospital, and she survived, though she was in really bad shape when I checked up on her the next day. Here's where I may be the asshole. Our managers found out that Deborah was hospitalized for over-drinking while technically at a work function, and they fired her on the spot. Everyone also found out that I was the one who insisted on calling an ambulance. The older employees are all saying I did the right thing and that she could have died. But the younger ones are calling me a snake and saying I got her fired on purpose because she was competition. Comments. Comment 1. NTA. Better jobless than dead. You did exactly right, I stand corrected. Spelling matters reply. I'm sure the coworkers giving OP shit would have also given her shit if she didn't call the ambulance and the coworker died. She did the right thing for sure. If they'd dragged her back to the hotel, put her to bed, and she died overnight, they'd be fired and arrested. OP saved everyone's ass. This actually happened to a friend. He got an offer letter just after we graduated, was treating his friends to food and drinks, drove drunk on a bike, and crashed, hit his head. There were no superficial injuries, and the friend who was on the bike with him was also drunk, what high. So they decided not to take him to a hospital, and took him to his apartment to sleep it off. He never woke up. Gone for good at 22, my friend's entire family was looking forward to him working. There were lower income class, both parents disabled. He was looking forward to being their support system. Don't drive drunk, for your sake and others. And if you ever suffer a head injury, go straight to ER. And next to story 12. My roommate is trying to sublease her room to someone I have a restraining order against. I need help. Original post. When I was a freshman in college, a guy named Pete, 21 million, name changed, began harassing me to date him. I refused over and over again, and it ended with him ripping my shirt off at a party to try to touch my breasts. I filed a police report and Pete was found guilty of assault. I have a 1,000-foot restraining order against Pete. Fast forward to this week, and my roommate Shelly needs a subletter to take over for her while she studies abroad for the summer. She didn't know she was leaving until 2 weeks ago and has been looking for someone to take over since then. She found Pete on CL and asked me if I approved. I showed her my court documents, but Shelly claims she can't find anyone else to take over and that I will have to deal. We got into a heated argument and she just left the apartment. This morning, Shelly texted me that Pete would be moving his stuff into the apartment today. I called the police, but Pete hasn't shown up yet, so they can't do anything. Shelly also says she will be staying for the remainder of the week. The lease says that she can move whoever she wants in without my permission. Same goes for me, but there's still the issue of the restraining order. The landlord told me that it was between Shelly and me to figure out. We both have 1-year leases that expire in December with the same terms. TL, DR. Roommate is trying to sublease your apartment to a man I have a restraining order against. She told me to deal with it. Landlord and cops haven't done anything about it. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Is Pete aware that you're the person he'll be sharing the apartment with? You might want to let him know that you'll be calling the police if he sets foot in the place. Oop. Pete is aware that I'm the roommate because Shelly posted the ad with a photo of us both, without my permission. I already promised I would be calling the police, but Shelly is locked in her room and refuses to listen to me. I'm chilling by the door with 911 already pre-dialed. Comment 2. I agree with the consensus of calling the police the moment he arrives. Has he actually signed anything, like a sublet agreement? If so, he'll probably be on the hook to pay for an apartment he can't legally step in. Also not a lawyer, but I can't imagine that attempting to enter a living arrangement with a person holding a restraining order doesn't negate the restraining order. The first question I would ask Pete if I were a cop judge is, why did you think you could live there without violating the order? OP. Shelly claims that Pete has already paid her for all 3 months in advance and that he signed a contract with her. I told her that her contract does not override my restraining order, but she basically put her hands over her ears to drown out what I was saying. I plan on calling the cops the moment I see his car pull up, which is less than 1,000 feet. Shelly will still be here for the rest of the week, so I'm afraid this will escalate. Update. Hi everyone. Thanks for reading this update. I have added some extra details at the beginning to better explain what happened. Things took some M. Night Shyamalan twists. Details: Shelly and I were not close friends. We were simply roommates with our own separate bedrooms and a connecting kitchen living space. I have only known her since last December when we originally signed our leases. We have hung out, but the only real connection we had is that she likes anime, Japan, and I am Asian. The Craigslist ad that Shelly posted didn't have a photo. It turns out that she had used a generic photo of the two of us in an ad on our college's Facebook page, but Shelly took it down before I got a chance to take a screenshot. Actual update. After I made my Reddit post, Shelly was locked in her room for 3 hours. I tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't come out of the room. She left her room to get food, and just walked past me as if I didn't exist. Everyone who I called told me that until Pete actually showed up, no crime was being committed, so I couldn't report it until then. I just sat by the door and window watching for Pete's car. This continued until early Saturday morning when Shelly woke up for her morning jog. I was still looking for Pete's car. I stayed up all night on the couch. Shelly tried to sneak out past me, but I woke up and blocked the door. I needed an explanation for why I was being forced to stay up all night waiting to call the police on Pete when she knew that I had a restraining order against him. Shelly's explanation was that the restraining order doesn't matter to her, that she has dealt with unreasonable people like me before, and that she has never listened to any restraining order before now, so why should she just for me? The more I listened, the sicker I felt. Shelly basically admitted to me that she is a cunt. I told Shelly that she was a real piece of work and that I was going to maintain my watch for Pete and that I would contemplate taking legal action. She told me that whether I liked it or not, she was done looking for subletters and that it was my problem. I told her to get out and go for her jog, and she left and came back a bit later and locked herself in her room again. Sometime around noon, I had accidentally fallen asleep because I had been awake 36 plus hours at that point. I woke up and saw Pete helping Shelly move her stuff into her car. I didn't see him in the apartment, but he was helping her in the parking lot. I immediately locked them both out and called the police. Shelly and Pete came to the door again, and when Pete saw it was locked and when he saw me watching from the window, he blew up at Shelly. He started to ask her why I was in the apartment and why Shelly didn't tell him that I was the roommate. He demanded his money back and I could hear them screaming at each other through the door. The cops showed up, handcuffed Pete and Shelley. I told them my story and Pete said he had text messages and emails to back himself up. The cops checked his phone, saw text from Shelley saying along the lines that her roommate wouldn't care about XYZ because he was a chill guy. Pete had posted his own ad looking for a male roommate. That's right, Shelley is a liar too. The cops released Pete because he had proof that he didn't know it was me. I'm okay with this because I saw the emails, text too. Shelley was charged with disorderly conduct and her mom came to get her. Sunday evening, Shelley and her mom come back to the apartment to finish packing for her study abroad. Shelley made some snide remarks about me, definitely going roommate hunting to find her a subletter as I said I would. I ignored her. Shelley left for her plane this morning. You know the good thing about separate leases? I am only liable for my rent, not hers. So I'm going to sit on my butt for the rest of the summer while she gets evicted for lack of rent payment. TLDR. Pete had no clue it was me. Shelley got arrested. She thinks I'll find a subletter, but I'm going to let her get evicted. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Sounds like a crappy situation all around, but it also sounds like Pete didn't know, and now that he does, will not be back to bother you. Since you are on separate leases, you should hopefully not have anything to worry about legally or financially. Let Shelley deal with those issues herself, she brought them on herself. A quick question, if she does fail to pay, could you in any way get kicked out, or are you pretty much in the clear? Either way, good luck, your roommate is immature and deserves the consequences of whatever happens to her in this situation. OP. Our leases explicitly say that we are only liable for our individual portion of the rent, so I'm in the clear. And Pete really didn't know about me being there. That's how much of a bitch Shelley is to let a man get arrested over something so stupid. And thanks. Comment 2. I mean, what did she think was gonna happen? On top of the shameless assholery, Shelley sounds like she's missing a few marbles. Oop. I think that what happened was that Shelley was focused only on going abroad and not focused on her own actions. She couldn't find anyone, so as soon as she found someone she thought problem solved, and ignored the problems until I called the police. Apu also had this comment: I wish she could have gotten charged with more, but she started bawling her eyes out to the police officer and he went easy on her because she looks so young. To me it's just another sign that she's an awful person because she was manipulating the cops. The lease states explicitly that I'm not liable for her rent, and even if she tries to sue me, it's my word against hers and I'm confident I would win that legal battle. Pete is staying as far away from it as he can, and he apologized to me and is trying to get his deposit back from her. So next to story 13. My best friend's fiancé confessed he loves me but still planned to marry her. I told her, she left him, and I'm helping her move on. My best friend and I have always been close, and I adore her. We're really open and honest with each other, about as close as two people can go without being romantically attached. We're even joking that we're wives, because we're so close. Because of her fastidious personality, we have already discussed random circumstances and how we would like the other to approach them. For example, if a guy asked one of us out, how would the other react? Or if we both developed affections for the same person. We've even discussed what would happen if one of us died. One of these situations involved the dreaded, if I had a boyfriend and he had feelings for you issue. The possibility of this happening has arisen several times over the years, with varied degrees of concern. We both thought that would be terrible, but we couldn't agree on how to deal with it. I've always claimed that I'd want to know regardless of the circumstances, but she insisted on not telling me. She has been adamant about this every time it comes up, regardless of how I phrase or change the circumstance. She made it abundantly apparent that she would never want to know. About 3 years ago, my best buddy began dating a guy. He was already a loose member of our friend group, so we both knew him. I didn't think much of him at first. He appeared cool, courteous, and respectful. He gradually grew more integrated into our group, and he got along with everyone. The guys in the group liked him, the girls were excited for my closest friend, and, most importantly, she was overjoyed. She had always wanted to be in love, and he seemed ideal for her. He treated her and everyone else with great respect. He and I got along great, but we never hung out one-on-one. Our conversations were primarily limited to small talk about music, work, and other casual topics, which occurred in group situations. He made similar efforts to connect with the other members of the group, and I always appreciated that he was interested in her life and the people she was close to. I've always been the odd one out among our group of pals. I missed a few classes in school, so the most of my pals are significantly older than me, and I've always been the baby of the group. While most of us attended to the same institution, I've never been interested in dating. Though I've had interest from men, I'm a daydreamer who is obsessed with my profession. My future goals do not include children, and may not even include marriage. The idea of love appeals to me, but I've always been content with myself and have never felt compelled to seek it out. This resulted in an ongoing joke among our friends about me dying alone, surrounded by dogs. It was innocent fun, and the guy joined in on the jokes. Over time, I observed that he was particularly concerned in my love life, urging me to follow my goals and take my time. My best friend always did the same thing, so I didn't think much of it. Until about 4 months ago, I met a man, 25 million, who utterly swept me off my feet. We'll call him Max because that is his name. It was very unexpected, he just swooped in, and we've had a lovely, fairy tale-like romance. Because of my lack of experience with relationships, I've spent a lot of time discussing my sentiments with my best buddy. She's pleased for me, offers advice, and is usually quite supportive. Her fiancé, let's call him Guy, is often present during these chats and occasionally contributes. Everything seemed wonderful and awesome until Guy started acting strangely. We'd be hanging out as a group, and I'd relate a tale about Max. Guy would suddenly act strangely, informing me that seemingly typical things Max did were red flags. For example, when Max unexpectedly came up to take me stargazing late at night, which I appreciated because I enjoy surprises and work in astronomy, Guy went on about how hazardous it was for me to go alone, blah, blah. Guy has always been polite, supportive, and considerate to others. His judgment is so respected that my best friend began to question Max's intentions solely because Guy expressed doubts. Meanwhile, all of my other pals thought Max sounded fantastic and dismissed Guy's conduct as strange. During this time, Guy told me that he planned to marry my closest friend. I was ecstatic for them and pledged to keep it a secret. He told me because he wanted advice on the ring and how my best friend wanted to be proposed to. Everything appeared fine until it wasn't. The tipping point occurred when Max met my friends for the first time. Everyone liked him, and he appeared to get along with everybody. Max and Guy were speaking off to the side when Guy abruptly dropped his drink on the table and walked out of the pub. My best friend became perplexed and pursued him, while I approached Max to find out what had happened. Max appeared shocked. He told me that Guy had been performing the big brother thing, which he had learned from a number of the guys in the group. The majority of them were joking around, but Guy was much more serious. He stormed out after Max expressed how serious he was about me. Max told him that there was no need for concern because he would never injure me. Later on, Max speculated that Guy might be envious. I was hesitant because Guy had never done or said anything to indicate that he had affections for me. He'd always treated me the same as the rest of the group, despite the fact that we spent more time together because I frequently visited him and my closest friend's house. I decided I'd had enough of the stress and messaged Guy. First, I inquired if he was okay. Then I stated I hoped things was okay amongst us all. The conversation went as follows. My response: "Is everything okay? I hope we're good." The gentleman: "It's not cool, I don't trust that guy." You: "Do you mind if I ask why not?" Specifically: "No one else has bad vibes, everyone even invited him to the beach tomorrow." Guy: "What are you saying?" He looks at you funny. "I can't explain it properly. You've known me a while. You know I have your best interests at heart, trust me on this. I understand that you can't help but get bad vibes, but no one else does. I'm sorry, but I need more than trust me to go on. While I appreciate your concern, I'm capable of making my own mistakes, and I don't think this is one. It would mean a lot to me if you could try to get along with him to make it easier for him to fit in. I plan on keeping him around for a while, and, best friend, wants to do double dates and stuff. You're going to run into him eventually." Guy replies: 1. Double dates sound lame. 2. Even if they didn't, I don't want him to come. I say: 1. Take that up with your lady. 2. Do you really not like him that much? He responded: "Okay, he seems alright, but kind of weird. How can a theater kid be so alpha? It's more that, I'm jealous." My response was: "I resent the notion that theater guys can't be manly. But also, the group is really tight, and everyone really likes you. You've been one of us for years now. Max got a lot of attention tonight because he's the new guy. I'm sorry if you felt excluded, but I promise it's really not like that." He didn't respond for a long, then sent this. He said: "I've been thinking very carefully about how to phrase this message. I don't want you to think I don't love best friend, because I do, very much, but I'm also in love with you and have been for about 2 years. When I realized, I thought about breaking up with best friend, but you were always so in your own world. I thought I'd never have a shot anyway, especially if I was your BFF's ex. I pushed it down and lived with it. It was hard, it sucked. I got over it, Kai. I figured that if I couldn't be with you, I could at least be happy with best friend, and close to you. Then you met Max, and watching you begin to fall in love with him was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. I know this is cliché and theatrical. I know it's wrong, and I should just not say anything about him, but I genuinely feel sick when you talk about him. I can't tell you how much I wanted to strike the guy last night, and then how bad I felt about it when I learned he was actually a nice guy. I believe the only thing worse than you being with another guy is you being with another guy I like. Sorry for offloading this onto you. I know it's unfair to do this now. I do love best friend, you know I do. I want to marry her. I would rather you didn't tell her, but what happens next is up to you, I guess. You. If this is a joke, it's not funny. Can you please tell me the truth? He replied. Sorry, but that is the truth. What are you going to do? I have not responded to him. He then sent me a few more texts, asking what I was going to do. I said, I'm thinking. Small edit. Since I posted this, he has sent several more messages wondering what I was going to do. I told him I hadn't made up my mind, but I also made it apparent that I didn't reciprocate his feelings. I am devastated, and my feelings are nothing compared to how best friend would react if she knew. I want to tell her so badly. I know if I were in her situation, I would want to know. The last thing I want is to marry someone who isn't open with me about something like this. But when we joked about this situation earlier this year, she insisted she didn't want to know. I understand it is not my responsibility, but I still feel bad. I'm wondering if I did anything to provoke Guy's reaction, and if I can even continue to pretend he never said anything. His affections have never been reciprocated. Max was with me when I received the message and has been incredibly supportive, albeit a little annoyed with Guy for obvious reasons. Send help. Summary. Best friend and Guy met 3 years ago. He fit right in with our group of friends, got along with everyone, and was overall a pleasant person. Life continued on. They moved in together, and I was overjoyed for her. He is everything she has ever wanted. Then I met what seemed to be my dream boyfriend. Everyone was pleased for me, except Guy, who became quite standoffish and strange about it. I don't think much about it. Guy wants to marry my closest friend and asks me for advice. Awesome. After Max and Guy meet for the first time, things quickly escalate. Guy begins messaging me that he is in love with me but wants to marry my best friend and only be in love with me in the shadows. His sentiments for me are not returned in the slightest. I need to discuss this Reddit. Should I tell her? Should I keep this to myself? I am upset at Guy. I feel dreadful. I feel terrible for my dearest friend. I'm not sure if I can face her in the eyes while she marries this person. I'm not sure I can let her marry him without her knowing all the facts. I'm overwhelmed. Please give me some advice. Update. Sorry, this will probably grow long. It does. There were many differing ideas on what to do, and many of you had very good reasons for your suggestions. However, there appeared to be a consensus. 1. This sucks, and there is no ideal answer, and 2. Everyone seemed to agree on the letter idea, which had been presented by a couple of people. The gist was that I should write a letter, add screen caps, and then give her the information. That way, she would have some control over whether or not she wanted to know. I have to admit that telling her there was something to know felt like I was forcing her to open it. But this is what happened. I made the envelope and went to her house while Guy was working, or just to hang out. Typical things. Reddit, I'm not a bad actress, but this woman knows me very well. She answered the door for me and instantly asked what was wrong. To my everlasting shame, I burst into tears. It was quite pitiful of me and not great. Ugh. After I had collected myself, I began saying what I had been practicing in my brain. That was something we'd discussed a lot in hypothetical scenarios, and it had actually occurred. She'd always stated she didn't want to know, but I wanted to give her the option. I handed her the letter. Then, without even opening it, she started crying, which prompted me to restart. That was okay since the absurdity of us both standing in her living room crying all over each other made us giggle a little. Many others assumed she had noticed or understood Guy's feelings, and they were completely correct. But it gets crazier than that. I honestly cannot believe I'm describing this. It's simply odd. I do not know. My closest friend had assumed Guy had a harmless little crush on me, the kind that people in partnerships sometimes have. But when he didn't tell her about it, she began to feel uncomfortable. She did something she should not have. You know how it goes, she snooped. She snooped on his PC months ago and discovered a file with my initials buried among a slew of other documents. She went to get his laptop and handed it to me to read as she read my letter. Inside, He had written stories, similar to fan fiction, about the three of us living a poly relationship lifestyle as spouses. Some of it was sexual content, which, I think I would understand more if it had only been sexual fantasies. However, there were also really long records about our lives together. It also goes deep. There was a whole storyline about him attempting to persuade me to have children. I love them, but I don't have children, and everyone knows it. There were many stories of varying lengths. I didn't read them all. Instead, I browsed them with my mouth hanging wide. It's difficult to express. It was strange to read about myself like that. There were newer docs that my closest friend hadn't read yet. She went on to say that she didn't mind because she was in all of the articles as well. That reassured her of his love for her, but having me in their lives in that way was clearly not ideal for her. She was disturbed by the way he had spoken to me in the previous day's messages and those he had sent since. I asked her many questions, including whether she felt safe. She stated she did. When I asked her what she wanted to do, she stated she wanted to leave him. She also apologized for not informing me earlier. While it bothers me that she didn't, given what transpired later, I've basically forgiven her and put any discussion about it on hold. She doesn't need it right now. I've been so glad that she wasn't upset with me for busting her bubble and was more concerned about her that it appears to be a secondary issue. This was not one of the things I expected to happen during my vacation. The subject then moved to me being concerned about her safety. While he does not appear to be dangerous, his conduct is quite compulsive, and he is clearly irritated that his fantasy is growing more and more distant from reality with Max in the picture. I'm also concerned about Max's safety. I'm not sure if I'm being rational or paranoid. She continuously assured me that she felt absolutely protected. She claims he has never done anything but this, which is a red sign, but she still wants to leave. She is naturally cautious, so she is taking extra precautions. Then she stood up and began packing her bags, giving me normal, business-like orders on what items she wanted me to gather from around the home. She filled her suitcases, and I packed a box with her personal belongings. She then wrote a note to Guy stating that she no longer thought they should be together and that she would discuss it with him via messaging or in person a few days later in a public area. She assured me of the plan. This is when I may have done something wrong, I'm not sure. I have a pen drive on my keychain. I told her I needed to grab copies of the articles because, even if she doesn't believe it would happen, we need something to prove his compulsive behavior. She consented, and I now have a pen drive filled with stories and playlists about myself. My best friend and her ex, I'm not going to lie, I've been tempted to read the stories out of morbid curiosity, but I've managed to resist so far. We went to my apartment first to decide what to do next. Her feelings were understandably mixed. I then got a call from Max and filled him in. He advised we stay with him because Guy doesn't know where he lives. However, my best friend preferred to stay in a nearby motel. We paid for it with my car, and after I hovered nervously over her as she settled in, she finally declared she wanted to be alone. That is not uncommon for her when she is upset. I've been visiting her, and she's been messaging me the entire time. So I'm very certain about where her brain is. Sad, but coping well given everything. Still, I can't help but be worried. I'll remain with Max till things settle down. Since approximately 5 p.m. That night, 2 nights ago, I received messages from Guy. They are the I just want to talk sort, not aggressive or anything. I was about to block him on everything, but my best friend persuaded me not to since she was concerned about his mental health. For the time being, I'm staying at Max's as a precaution. Guy has attempted to communicate with both me and her, but the only reaction he has received is to read the note she left him again. Finally, thank you to everyone who left a remark, especially those who wrote a lot, gave great advice, sent me good vibes, or PM'd me. You people were fantastic, and I appreciate all of your feedback.